I'm ready, yeah. The Platting Board will come to order. It's March 6th, 2019, 6:35. And first order of business, we're going to start our meeting now. If you guys need to talk, could you take it outside the room, please? The first order of business is roll call. May I have roll call, please?
Dan Young.
Present.
Becky Lipison.
Present.
Kevin Cross.
Present.
Mark Seward.
Present.
Valerie Ritz.
Present.
Jenna Welton. Present. Clayton Walker, Christina Enix, and Don Porter are excused. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item of business is I would like a motion to move case F1C to the first one tonight. May I have a motion for that, please? Becky Lipson moves, Valerie seconds. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. The next item of business is action summaries for Wednesday, February 6, 2019. May I have a motion to approve the action summaries? Kevin Cross is the mover. Becky Lipson is the second. Is there any discussion or modifications? Is there any objections? Hearing and seeing none, the action summaries are approved. The next item on the agenda is minutes. May I have a motion, a positive motion to approve the minutes, please? Kevin Cross moves. Ms. Ritz seconds. Is there any objections or any corrections or discussion on the minutes? Is there any objection to accepting the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, they are accepted. The next item on is special order of business is disclosures. Are there disclosures tonight? Mr. Seward.
Through the chair, in case S12466, Graham Sub, Lot 1A, Block 2, first edition. I noticed the other day that I did the original plat on that in the early 90s for, I think, the previous owner. I have no involvement with the previous owners or any of the platting action and can remain unbiased with no conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion directing him to Mr. Seward to participate? Mr. Cross and Ms. Wilson seconds. Mr. Cross, would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes. Mr. Seward has indicated that although he drafted the original plat, he can remain biased. He has no financial or personal interest in it, and I move that he participate.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or discussion? I would like to make a comment in that I will support this motion also because it's not Mr. Seward's plat that we're evaluating tonight. So are there any objections to directing Mr. Seward to participate? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Seward, you're directed to participate in that case tonight. Ms. Lipson.
Thank you. I would like to make a possible disclosure in case S12464. My law firm, Ashburn & Mason, works closely with the petitioner's representative S4 group on certain land use actions. I have absolutely no involvement in this case, no financial bias or bias otherwise. I'm just opting to make the disclosure.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Ms. Lipson to participate? Kevin Cross and Ms. Wilson seconds. Mr. Cross, would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, although she has indicated that she has had previous work experience with the petitioner's representative, she can remain biased. She doesn't have a personal financial interest in the outcome of this case, and I motion that she participate.
Thank you. Are there any discussion? Are there any opposition to the motion? Hearing and seeing none, Ms. Lipson, you are directed to participate. Are there any other disclosures? Okay, I have disclosures. I'll go next. So I have 3 disclosures. I would like to put them all together to abbreviate our time. The first one is in case S12453 Parcel A, U.S. Survey Number 1170 Subdivision, Tracks A and B. I was an employee of the petitioner's representative more than 30 years ago, and my firm has done business with the petitioner's representative. On case S112464 Mountain Meadows Estates, lots 1 through 21, my firm has done business with the petitioner's representative in the past. We are not involved with this project. And in the case S112460, End of the Road Subdivision, lots 2A and 2B, my firm has done business with the petitioner's representative in the past. We are not involved with this project, and I do have specialized geological, hydrological knowledge of this site. And all of these cases before us tonight, I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of this board without personal bias. My past involvement and personal interest will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case. May I have a motion either directing me to participate in all 3 of these, or if the mover wishes, we could break them out. Mr. Cross and Ms. Lipson seconds. Mr. Cross, will you speak to your motion, please?
Yeah, could you give me those case numbers again?
Yes. The first case is S12453. The second case is S112464. And the third case is S112460.
All right. I'm moving that you participate in S12453, S112464, and S112460. You've disclosed that although you've had past business relationships with these individuals, you no longer have a financial interest in the outcome of the cases before you. Although that you have past geological knowledge of these, you are not standing to benefit financially. You are not driven by a personal interest, and you will not be rewarded financially and can remain fair and biased. In fact, I think that your geological knowledge of some of these cases is a benefit to us on the board, and so I move that you participate.
Thank you. For a point of clarification, my involvement has been with the petitioner's representatives on all 3 cases. So is there any further discussion? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes, and I'm directed to participate in all 3 cases. Thank you. Next item of business is informational items, the abbreviated plat action summaries for February 4th, February 11th, and February 19th. We don't require any comments or motions for these. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we will move forward. Next item under special order of business is annual election of officers. May I have a motion, please, for chairman and vice chairman, or one at a time if you wish. Ms. Lipson and Ms. Wilson seconds. Ms. Lipson.
Thank you. I am making a motion to nominate you, Dan Young, as the chair and Clayton Walker as the vice chair.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations tonight? Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing none. No, I have none. I will chair the meeting. Next order of business is the consent agenda. We don't have a consent agenda tonight. And then we are now into old business or new business. We have no old business, correct? So we are now into new business, and this is, oh, thank you very much. Practice. The Platting Board meets each month of the first and third Wednesday except holidays and regular meetings. If the Platting Board fails to complete its agenda for the regular meeting, the board carries over the remainder of the agenda to the following meeting. The procedures by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meeting is, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the commission rules and procedures. Petitioners, including all of his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. And I think that quite often we have a misunderstanding of that. So when a petitioner gets up, I will ask them if they want to reserve any time for rebuttal. So any time that they don't use, they can have for rebuttal, or if they want to set time aside. For example, if they want 3 minutes for rebuttal, then we'll set the timer for 10 minutes and they'll still have their 3 minutes. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., have 5 minutes, and individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the board. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. The first case tonight is F1C, case S12466. May we have the staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The owner of Graham Subdivision Block 2, Lot 1A, has submitted a request to remove a plat note affecting the property. The plat note states, upon the upgrading of Arctic Boulevard to include curb and gutter, direct vehicular access to Lot 1A, Block 2 shall be prohibited. Now, the municipal traffic engineer has judged that the existing driveway does not have a negative impact on adjacent properties. None of the other reviewing agencies objected to the removal of this plat note. The department mailed notification to all the surrounding neighbors in the neighborhood, and none of those submitted any comments and objection either. Therefore, the planning department judges that the plat note is no longer needed. The approval criteria A, B, and C are met for a removal of a plat note, and the department's recommending removal of plat note number 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? We will now open the public hearing. May we have the petitioner's representative? Would you please state your name, spell your last name, and let us know if you'd like to reserve time for rebuttal.
Okay. My name is Melissa Branch, B-R-A-N-C-H, with Big City Engineers. I'm the petitioner's representative. We think it's pretty straightforward. We just thought it would be rude not to be here as you considered our request. So I'm going to leave it, and if you have questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, none yet. Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify on this matter tonight? Anyone at all? I see no one. Would you like to use any of your, she's indicating no. So the public hearing, are there any questions for the petitioner? No? Hearing and seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing and the matter now rests with the board. In the case of S12466, may I have a positive motion? Mr. Cross moves, Ms. Lipson seconds. Mr. Cross, would you state your motion for the record, please?
In case number S12466, Graham subdivision, I move for the removal of the plat note 2 on plat 91-120.
Thank you. And Mr. Cross, would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes. Again, one, I want to point out that over 120 public notices were put out. There was no discerning opinions from the public. Additionally, as noted under C, despite modification removal of the plat notes, the plat continues to meet all the approval criteria of the subsection, which I think is the most important. Property functions, it's meeting all the approval criteria, and this is basically a bureaucratic clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or findings? I will make a couple. On page 1, the staff has found that the plat note is no longer needed, that any future changes to the existing driveway will be reviewed by both agencies with the driveway permit, and none of the reviewing agencies object to removal of the plat notes. Are there any objections to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. Good job. Next item on the agenda is case S12444, Odom Industrial Park Subdivision, tracks A1 and B1. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see here. This is a request to subdivide one lot and 2 tracts into 2 tracts with vacation of a portion of a 20-foot telecommunications and electrical easement. The subdivision request is before the Platting Board, as the previous abbreviated plat was done in 2016 under case 2016-82, and this subdivision request creates tracts of land within 48 months of the recorded plat. That's found that under AMC 2103, 200B2B Section 3 requires that any tract, parcel, or lot created by approval of a plat within the previous 48 months by the abbreviated plat process to be processed for approval by the Platting Board. And that's why we're here tonight. For road improvements and dedication, the owner is currently under a subdivision agreement to improve Electron Drive to municipal standards, and the improvements are currently under construction. The proposed subdivision is dedicating 3 feet of right-of-way. In conformance with adopted plans, the preliminary plat appears to conform to the goals and policies of the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan, as well as the West Anchorage District Plan, specifically with the goal to preserve key industrial lands for existing and future industrial economic development, and to preserve sufficient developable land with access to rail, air, and truck transportation. For the vacation request, the petitioner has requested that vacation of the portion of a 20-foot telecommunications and electrical easement. The easement was created by Plat 2016-82 to provide an easement along Electron Drive and then around the unsubdivided parcel. That was not part of the plat at that time. However, the current subdivision incorporates that parcel now into the 2 tracks, and a new easement will be placed along that Electron Drive. The utility companies have expressed no objection to this request. To vacate the T&E easement, the utility companies will have the opportunity to review the proposed plat and request easements as necessary during the final platting stage. Therefore, staff believes that the easement is in excess of municipal need and recommends approval of this vacation, subject to the conditions found on page 6 of the staff packet. I can answer any questions that you have. It's actually page 6 and 7 of the staff packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Hearing and seeing none, we will open this to the public hearing. May we have the petitioner's representative? Please state your name for the record, spell your last name, and let us know if you'd like to reserve time for rebuttal.
All right. Good evening. My name is Brad Watts, W-A-T-T-S. I'm a land surveyor with CRW Engineering Group. I'm here as a representative to the petitioner, and we agree with all the department's recommendations. I would just reserve the rest of the time for rebuttal or any questions you guys have. Sounds about right.
Excuse me, 9 minutes and 52 seconds for rebuttal. Are there any questions for the petitioner's representative tonight? If with none, is there anyone from the public wishing to testify on this matter tonight? Hearing and seeing none, would you like to use any of your rebuttal time? Are there any questions of the petitioner's representative? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Matter now rests with the board. In the case S12444, may I have a positive motion for approval of the request for vacation, elimination of a portion of the 20-foot telecommunications and electrical easement along the northern property boundary to an unspecified, I haven't even finished. Mr. Cross has moved and Ms. Wilson's second. Mr. Cross, would you state your motion, please?
In the case of S12444, I move to approve the request for the vacation elimination of the portion of the 20-foot telecommunication electrical easement along the north property boundary for an unsubdivided parcel of land along Electron Drive, subject to condition 1.
Thank you. And Ms. Wilson is seconded. Or would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, this is a removal of a small section. However, it's important to note that this easement has been extended, and so it's basically just a rerouting of an existing easement. Additionally, the utility companies have expressed no objection to the request to vacate the 20-foot telecommunications electrical easement.
Thank you. Are there any discussion or other findings? For me, I intend to support this motion, and I want to put into the findings that this preliminary plat appears to generally conform to the goals and policies of the Anchorage 2040 land plan use in the West Anchorage District 2012. Specifically, the parcel conforms to land use objective number 7 and sections 4.1 of the West Anchorage District Plan. Are there any objections to this motion that's on the floor? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. May I have a positive motion in the case S12444, approval of the plat for 24 months, subject to the conditions on page 6 and 7. Anyone wishing to make a motion? Mr. Cross. And Ms. Ritz seconds the motion. Mr. Cross, would you state your motion, please?
In the case of S12444, Odom Industrial Park subdivision, I move to approve the plat for 24 months, subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, Condition 2, 2A, 2B, 3, 4, 4A, 1 and 2.
Thank you. And Mr. Cross, will you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, again, just redirecting towards the notes that are made at the bottom of page 5 regarding the vacation request, that this is removal of a section easement and new easement is being placed along Electron Drive. Utility companies have not expressed any objection. And additionally, typically, whenever somebody's moving an easement or there's regrading, there's drainage concerns and there's water drainage. And I just want to point out that the property owners and utilities shall not obstruct, impede, or alter drainage facilities, swales, or ditches. So I move to approve.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Are there any additional findings? I'll just put in the record that there was nobody from, or no one from the public that testified tonight other than the petitioner's representative. Is there any objection to this motion? Any objection at all? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is case S12453. Stuck Again Heights subdivision number 1, block 1. Lots 1, 2, and 3. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Correction, Mr. Chair. I think when we switched the order, we're on B, which is S12453. That's the port plat, the U.S. Survey number 1170.
Thank you for.
No problem.
Thank you very much. We're just going to start over. The next case is S12453, U.S. Survey number 1170, Parcel A, Tracks A and B. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a request to subdivide 10 lots into 2 large tracts of land. This plat is before the Platting Board as it is state-owned property and subject to the requirements of a public hearing, AMC 2103-200B2. The parcels are bounded by the south side of the Small Boat Launch Road to the terminus of Ocean Dock Road to the north. The original mean high water line prior to fill serves as the eastern boundary of the proposed plat. The western boundary is located in Kinnick Arm, and with the plat being 412 acres of land down there in the port area, the majority of that is out in Kinnick Arm. The existing parcels are owned by the Alaska Railroad, and proposed Tract A is being leased by the Port of Alaska and used for storage of cement. Once the final plat is recorded, the Alaska Railroad intends to convey that Tract A to the Port of Alaska and then retain Tract B. The current uses for both tracts will continue as they are currently today. There were no objections by reviewing agencies to this platting action. There was no public comment received by the Planning Department. No improvements to the roads or dedication are recommended at this time. The preliminary plat appears to conform with the petition site's classification as shown in the Anchorage 2440 land use plan map. Specifically, this subdivision conforms to Land Use Policy 9.4, which states recognize industrial trade sectors as high priority for economic development and industrial land availability, preservation, and infrastructure investment actions. So with that being said, the department recommends approval of the plat, subject to the conditions found on page 5 of the staff report. I'll just state that the plat conforms to all applicable zoning district standards. There were no objections by the reviewing agencies, and therefore we recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? The public hearing is now open. May we have the petitioner's representative please state your name for the record and spell your last name.
Hi, I'm Dave Hale, H-A-L-E, with R&M Consultants. We're representing the Port of Alaska on this one. I think it's pretty straightforward. We have no objection to the recommendations of staff. So I'd like to reserve whatever time is left if I need it. Hopefully
Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 54 seconds for reserve for rebuttal. Are there any questions of the petitioner's representative? Mr. Cross.
So you're just sectioning off the land that's underneath the port that's currently being leased out to separate that from the railroad land so that the entire leased land is separate from the adjoining acreage? Is that my understanding?
Yes, right now, all of Port A is owned by the state of Alaska, the Alaska Railroad, and they lease it to the port, who leases it to someone else. So they're just going to transfer that tract A.
Yeah, it makes it easier for a lease if it's just separated. All right, thank you.
Makes sense.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner's representative? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify tonight? Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none, would you like to use any of your rebuttal time? He's signaling no. So the public hearing portion of this is closed. Matter rests with the board. In the case of S12453, U.S. Survey number 1170, may I have a positive motion for approval of the plat for 24 months subject to conditions on page 5? Ms. Lipson moves and Ms. Ritz seconds. Ms. Lipson, will you state your motion, please?
I move in case number S12453 to approve the plat for 24 months subject to the following conditions, and the conditions are listed on page 5 of our packet. Condition number 1, condition number 2, condition 2A, 2B, 2C.
Thank you. And would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, as staff went through in its presentation, there have been no objections from reviewing agencies. There are no public comments, no public testimony today, and the plat conforms with the Anchorage 2040 land use plan map.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or additional findings? Mr. Cross.
I will also be moving to support this. I do want to note that on page 4 under road improvement dedication that as it says, as a result of this, no improvements or recommendations or alterations will happen to roads at this time.
Thank you. Any additional findings? I will offer that the preliminary plat appears to generally conform with the petition site's classification as shown on the Anchorage 2040 land use plan. Specifically, this subdivision conforms to land use policy 9.4. Are there any oppositions to this motion tonight? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. Next item of business is case S12454, Stuck-Again Heights subdivision, number 1, block 1, lots 1, 2, and 3. May I have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to remove a plat note on plat 79-249. The plat note in question requires common driveway access points to be shared between lots 1 and 2 and lots 3 and 4 in Stuck-Again Heights subdivision, number 1, block 1. Lot 4 is not participating in this application. 168 public hearing notices were mailed out on January 22nd, 2018, and no comments were received in return. There were no objections from reviewing agencies. The criteria listed in AMC 2103-200G9 must be met for successful removal or modification of a plat note. Those criteria have been met, and the MOA Traffic Department has no objection to the plat note removal, indicating they do not anticipate any existing or future adverse impacts as a result. With that being said, the department recommends removal of the plat note that reads, access to the following pairs of lots shall be restricted to a common access point, lots 1 and 2, and lots 3 and 4, block 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions of staff tonight? Ms. Lipson?
Yes, through the chair. I was just curious, is there opposition from the owner of Lot 4 to this action?
Through the chair, my understanding is that the owner of Lot 4 is non-responsive.
Thank you.
And Mr. Seward?
Through the chair to staff. Now, Lot 4 is not part of the platting process, so you stated that 1 and 2, and 3 and 4. But is that going to be clear on that? That 4 is, actually, we don't mention them in the approval? It would be just lots 1, 2, and 3?
Through the chair, if we move, so lots 1 and 2 are paired as a common access agreement, as are lot 3 and 4. So if lot 3 isn't participating in the plat note through this application, then lot 4 de facto would not be participating either. So we recommend for removal of the note.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? With that, we'll open the public hearing. May we have the petitioner's representative? Please state your name for the record, spell your last name for us, and let us know if you would like to reserve time for rebuttal.
My name is Michael Dregge. I represent the petitioners. Last name D-R-O-E-G-E, broker owner of Century 21 Realty Solutions. There was a presentation made, and there was no objections from staff. We don't need to save any time. It seems like it was pretty plain. I did, just for the record, reach out several times to the owner of Lot 4 via email, via mail, and posting the property, and there was no response at all.
Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 35 seconds for rebuttal if you choose to use it. Are there any questions of the petitioner's representative? Mr. Cross has a question for you.
Yes, Mr. Draghi. What would be the perceived negative effects to lot number 4 by acting? What would you say would be the result of no longer having to share that access point?
The issue was that none of the access point, no one used those access points, whether they were because of topography or location of well and septic for the location of the house. The only benefit to Lot 4 is that he didn't have to participate in the application fee. Everyone else participated and responded and was good with that. They just, for whatever their choice was, did not respond. So there wouldn't be any impact, and I think originally it was thought that those access points were required because they thought at one point Basher would be a bigger collective road, and having that access to Basher would probably have been a good idea. At this point, given the fact that there are 4 separate driveways, and on Lot 4 there's actually a U driveway with 2 accesses to Basher, the plat note becomes moot.
What are the size of those lots?
They're over an acre.
Over an acre. All right,
yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner's representative? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public wishing to testify in this matter tonight? Hearing and seeing none, would you like to use any of your rebuttal time? He's signaling no. We're going to close the public hearing. Matter rests with the board. In the case of S12454, Stuck Again Heights subdivision, number 1, block 1, lots 1, 2, and 3. May I have a positive motion for this case, this matter? And Mr. Cross moves. Ms. Lipson seconds. Mr. Cross, will you state your motion, please?
Yes, in regards to case S12454, Stuck Again Heights subdivision, number 1, block 1, lots 1, 2, and 3. I move for block 1, lots 1, 2, and 3, Stuck Again Heights number 1 subdivision on plat 79-249, removal of the plat note that reads, quote, access to the following pairs of lots shall be restricted to a common access point, lots 1 and 2, and lots 3 and 4, block 1, end quote.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, as as given testimony by the petitioner's representative, as well as notified on staff analysis on page 2, it says the conditions that require the plat notes on the original plat have changed, and the need for the plat note has been negated. I think that's the critical thing here. We're just here to make sure that this a plat note that has been noted that is no longer required. Again, notice that the Bashier Drive access it did not develop the way that was anticipated, and so it should be removed.
Thank you. Any discussion or additional findings? Mr. Seward.
Through the chair, on case 12454, I agree with the findings of the staff and Mr. Cross's comments, and also my primary concerns on something like this is line of sight and speed limits for the safety of it. The speed limit I know is 25 miles per hour, and the line of sight in both directions for these driveways, even in the wintertime, are safe for driving there. I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Seward. Are there any other findings or comments or discussion? In that case, I will make several. I find that the Municipal Traffic Department has no objections to the plat note removal, indicating they do not anticipate any existing future adverse impacts. And also we find that the removal of this plat note will not create any adverse impacts. Are there any objections to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. The next case is S12464, Mountain Meadows Estate Subdivision, lots 1 through 21. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to subdivide one lot into 21 lots with vacation of a 33-foot roadway and utility easement along the eastern property boundary, and variances from, I'll read the AMC code section for each one of these. From AMC 2108050, improvements from Class A design standards to construct vertical curb and gutters. AMC 2107060E 2CI, that's standards for pedestrian facilities in order to provide sidewalks in the cul-de-sac stem or bulb. And AMC 2107060E 2B, which is standards for pedestrian facilities to install sidewalks on both sides of all the streets. This request is being made to allow the subdivision of land and provide 21 residential lots within Anchorage. The petition site is located north of Abbott Road, generally between King David Drive and Cathedral Place. The petition site is surrounded by R1 single-family residential development to the north, east, and west. Across the street, Ruth Arcan Park, which is to the south, is zoned PLI for Public Lands and Institutions Park. The construction of 21 single-family lots shown for the proposed subdivision does not meet the minimum threshold of 100 trips in the peak hour, based to require traffic impact analysis as part of this platting process. The existing roads and the new roads are designed to handle anticipated trips in and out of this subdivision. In the matters of the road improvements and dedication, Winchester Street appears to be paved with a width of approximately 36 feet. It has type 2 curb and gutter on both sides and utility-owned street lining where it abuts the proposed subdivision. Winchester Street includes an attached sidewalk on the subdivision side that terminates at the northern boundary of the subdivision. That doesn't meet the municipal requirements for local street and Class A area, in which private development and staff is making a recommendation that the petitioner shall construct a 5-foot sidewalk on the subdivision side of Winchester Street. The unnamed street right-of-way shown on the plat is undeveloped, as well as the unnamed circle right-of-way, which is undeveloped. In the matters of plat 85-110, that originally dedicated 50 feet of right-of-way for King David Drive. The Platting Board at that time made a comment that direct vehicular access to Abbott Road should be prohibited and that King David Drive serve as a connector to the subdivision and the adjacent as-yet unsubdivided parcel. In the matters of the variance request, the petitioner is requesting a variance from code not construct vertical curb and gutters, to only construct sidewalk along the south side of the through road, and to not construct sidewalk along the cul-de-sac stem and bulb. The applicant is requesting variances for these three elements, and I will go through the approval of the variances. The Platting Board must find that the application substantially meets the 4 standards. So I'll read through each one of these standards and the pertaining variances that are being requested. Staff has found that the standard is not met in standard A for its sidewalks on both sides of the streets and to provide sidewalks in the cul-de-sac stem or bulb variance. There are no special circumstances or conditions affecting the property. That strict application of the regulation would clearly be impractical, unreasonable, or undesirable to the public. There are no physical circumstances of the land, and the lot is not affected by steep slopes, streams, or wetlands. The subdivision will be served by public water and wastewater, and the topographical layout, size, and shape of the lots are similar in size as the surrounding neighborhoods. Construction of sidewalks along the street and cul-de-sac bulb stem would be desired to the general public. In the matters of the improvements to construct type 1 barrier and curb and gutters, that standard is not met either. The required improvements will fit within the proposed road design, including the construction of a barrier curb versus rolled curb. Standard B, the standard has not been met for the 3 variances. In the matters of pedestrian facilities to install sidewalks on both sides of the street and to provide sidewalks in the cul-de-sac stem or bulb, the existing sidewalks need to be extended to continue to provide a safe pedestrian pathway within the connection and to the adjacent subdivisions. A sidewalk on both sides of the street and along the cul-de-sac is justified for the safety of the community. With the connection provided by King David Drive to Winchester Street and beyond, sidewalks will be needed to provide the safe through travel of pedestrians as well. In the matters of the type 1 barrier curb and gutter, granting the variance has potential to be detrimental to the public. Vertical type curb and gutters define borders between traveled and untraveled surfaces, such as sidewalks, and help contain low-speed traffic within the traveled surfaces. Vertical type curb and gutters discourage parking on sidewalks, which is a common problem identified in the Anchorage Pedestrian Plan, which states, the use of rolled curb construction also leads to problems because parked vehicles often encroach onto the block and block the adjacent sidewalks. Vertical curbs establish driveway widths that are not easily modified by homeowners. Driveways that are widened beyond the maximum allowed in code increase the distance pedestrians are exposed to vehicles backing into the right-of-way, and it also reduces the amount of snow storage available. For condition C, the standard has not been met, found not to be met for the 3 following variances. So for pedestrian facilities doing sidewalks on both sides of all streets, granting a variance to not install sidewalks on both sides of the street would have the effect of nullifying the intent of the subdivision regulations and the comprehensive plan. Specifically, the variance requests contradict Goal 1, which is to create a safer, more walkable city that will encourage winter pedestrian activity and make walking a safer and more attractive activity, as well as Goal 4, Policy 4.1, which is to provide for pedestrian walkway and trail connections in all subdivision plats for access to schools, regional parks, and between neighborhoods, which is what this subdivision, it applies to all 3 of those. And Goal 6, Policy 6.1, which is to promote land use and site design that make walking convenient and enjoyable of the 2007 Anchorage Pedestrian Plan goals and policies. In the matters to provide sidewalks in the cul-de-sac stem or bulb, the code provides clear direction on when sidewalk is required. Private development has stated that when the fitted curve equation for trip generation for single-family housing is used, the number of trips from these 16 lots in that cul-de-sac is 185, which is over the code threshold of 150. And as a result, the variance should not be granted. For the type 1 barrier curb and gutters, this intent of this section is to discourage, for safety reasons, vehicle pedestrian conflicts. Granting a variance will have the effect of nullifying the intent of those regulations in municipal code, which explicitly call for vertical type curb and gutters. In the Standard D, undue hardship. The staff has felt that the standard has not been met for the 3 variances for the sidewalks on both sides of the street and the cul-de-sac stem bulb. We've found that the petitioner is not deprived of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. Zoning and subdivision regulation necessarily impose some burden on property because by definition it limits the uses to which land may be developed. So long as all land similarly situated is subject to the same restrictions, hardship caused by the zoning classification and subdivision regulations alone does not constitute a valid ground for variance. Reasonable use of the land is not prevented by meeting the requirements for improvements. Undue hardship would not result from strict compliance with these regulations. For type 1 barrier curb and gutters, the U.S. Access Board's guidance on curb ramps does not require transitions to exceed 15 feet regardless of grade, which addresses the petitioner's concerns for lengthy transitions. This current code specifically calls for barrier-type curb to be used. The Traffic Department, Private Development, and Non-Motorized Transportation Coordinator recommend denial of the variances from standards to pedestrian facilities and to construct Type 1 vertical curb. Staff is recommending the denial of all 3 variances from the requirements for these improvements to Class A design standards. For the vacation request, the petitioner has requested to vacate that 33-foot roadway and utility easement along the eastern property boundary. So the vacation request has been reviewed and found it does conform to the municipal vacation policy standards. Policy 1 has been met. The right-of-way is surplus to the current and future needs of the public. The roadway, the other half of the roadway was vacated under Plat 85-203. Standard 2, the right-of-way is not listed on the classification listing for the official streets and highway plan. 3 and 4 have been met. They're not laying in the half-mile or quarter-mile grid. Standard 5 has been met. The remaining property is served by existing right-of-way. And Standard 6 has been met. Any utility easements required by the utility agencies will be placed on the plat. Like I said, Winchester Loop and Winchester Street were dedicated, and the 33-foot roadway and utility easement was vacated under the 1985-203 plat. Generally, reviewing agencies had no comment or no objection to the vacation request. Therefore, staff believes that the roadway and utility easement is in excess of municipal need, and we recommend approval of that vacation, subject to the conditions. So staff is finding that the conditions found on page 19, which is A, and then the variances, which is B, C, D, and then the plat itself, which is E, 1 through 8, is what we're recommending. However, in talking with the petitioner prior to the meeting, the planning staff would like, if we turn to page 20, we would like to, the last sentence in there, we will leave 6 as it is, except for the last sentence. We're going to make, you can make that number 9, and it should read, resolve with private development the need to evaluate the lighting levels where Winchester Street is adjacent to the proposed subdivision and install additional street lighting if needed to meet municipal required lighting levels. So that would be condition number 9. We're just going to separate that out and make it a resolve. I can answer any questions you have tonight. The petitioner's representatives here, and we also have Brandon Telford from Private Development. He's here to speak about any road design and private development standards for construction questions that may come up. Thank you.
Thank you. May we have you read the proposed item number 9 again so we can write it down?
Yep, no problem. So if we look at that last sentence, it'll read, resolve with private development the need to evaluate the lighting levels where Winchester Street is adjacent to the proposed subdivision and install additional street lighting if needed to meet municipal required lighting levels.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? We now open up the public hearing. May we have the petitioner's representative and state your name for the record, spell your last name, and let us know if you have time that you'd like to reserve for rebuttal.
Hello, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Craig Bennett, B-E-N-N-E-T-T, with S4 Group, representing the petitioner. And with me this evening is Grant Matthews with Triad Engineering, and I'd like to reserve 5 minutes for rebuttal. I'll be brief. Sean spoke to this case well. We're taking one lot, subdividing into 21 lots. We're asking for a vacation and some variances. For the vacation, it's a 33-foot 33-foot roadway and utility easement, and it's on the east property boundary. And the subdivision to the east, Plat 85-203, vacated it when they did their plat, and we're vacating this half now, or asking to. And staff is in support of this vacation. And we're also going to dedicate a 10-foot walkway easement on the south, the bulb going down to Abbott. It's between lots 13 and 14. And this would be a pedestrian access to the existing pedestrian access there on Abbott. And for the variances, I'll hand it off to Grant to let him speak to those.
Yeah, my name is Grant Matthews, M-A-T-H-E-W-S, with Triad Engineering. So just want to speak briefly about the variances we're applying for with this plat. First, regarding the sidewalk, when the development team first looked at this property, we examined the neighborhoods surrounding it. This is the last lot that hasn't been developed in the immediate vicinity. And we noticed that the existing cul-de-sacs did not have any sidewalk, and the existing through streets had sidewalk on one side or no sidewalk. So the thought was we could reduce some of the costs by not installing sidewalk on the cul-de-sac and installing it only on one side of the road for the proposed through street. The purpose wasn't to not install any pedestrian amenities. Like I said, still install the sidewalk on the through street on one side, and as Craig mentioned, the pedestrian connection to Abbott Road. And then regarding the vertical curb, I'll be brief on that since we met here just a month ago for a variance on a different project, but the same issue. Our position hasn't changed. We believe that the vertical curb is not appropriate for small lot residential subdivisions. It's more expensive to design, more expensive to build, and it's inherently inflexible. It makes the developer choose the driveway locations and consequently the locations of the houses long before the road is actually constructed. And if for whatever reason the layout changes or the house has to be shifted on the lot, then those driveways have to be ripped out and that curb and sidewalk has to be replaced, which costs approximately $7,500 per driveway. So we just think that it's not as good of an end product. Also, it creates an uneven walking surface, so every driveway has the up and down effect that you get with the vertical curb. And then the last thing I want to mention is the advisory comments on page 21. There's two there. The first is for just installing 6 inches of sidewalk through the development. I don't think this is the appropriate arena to be kind of getting into the minutia of the design. Requiring 6 inches thicker sidewalk through the whole thing just increases the cost. There's a lot of the sidewalk within this development that won't have any driveways connecting into it, and that can be addressed through the plan review process and discussing with the municipal engineer about where the sidewalk should actually be thickened for driveways. And then lastly, same thing regarding the driveways being reviewed by private development. This, as reads, more like a policy change, and we think that this should be addressed with public notice and comment and not just encumber this specific plat. Thanks.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes and 47 seconds left for rebuttal. Are there any questions for the petitioner's representative tonight? Mr. Cross.
Thank you. Regarding your variance to not put so no sidewalk on the cul-de-sac? Is that what I understand?
Yes, correct.
But you are going to have a sidewalk between lots, you said 13 and 14, to access Abbott?
Correct.
And we do have a sidewalk on what I imagine will be an extension in Winchester Loop along lots 1 through 5.
Is it on the south side? Yeah, it's on the south side. So it would
South
connect
side.
into the existing sidewalk on Winchester Street, or Winchester Loop, yeah.
So why no sidewalk? Why a sidewalk to the east and south and to the, okay, so will there be a sidewalk along those lots 21, 2019 heading to that?
Yes,
Okay.
if that was, since there's an existing sidewalk on the south side, we would connect into that existing sidewalk.
Okay, good. Just making sure, didn't see the notes in here that outlined exactly where that sidewalk would go, other than it's not very
Right,
clear.
yeah, it would just be not on the
Trying to make sure
north.
It's connected all the way through to our access to Abbott.
Correct, yep.
All right, excellent, thank you.
Any other questions of the petitioner's representative? I have one. Same question almost, just a little bit more specificity. This, I'm trying to understand exactly where the sidewalk goes. So it looks like it would be on the north side of Lot 6. Is that correct? Do you have the map? Which is the
Yeah, let me grab it here.
Which is the south side of the Winchester Loop?
That's correct. It's on the south side of Winchester Loop, connecting in with the existing sidewalk that continues to the east.
And does this also continue to the west to King David Drive?
No, there's no sidewalk along King David Drive. So it's the only sidewalk that is on, well, there's the sidewalk existing in Winchester Loop on the south side. So it would dead end at King David Drive to the west.
Oh, so it would extend to King David Drive?
Yes, it would extend to King David Drive to that western property boundary, but it would dead end there because there's nothing to tie into.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner's representative? Thank you very much. We're now going to open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify tonight? It looks like there's at least 4 of you. Would you mind when there's lining up, so there's at least 2 in line, so we can move forward quickly? I ask that you state your name for the record, spell your last name.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Stolle. I'm a 20-year resident, Stolle, S-T-O-L-L-E. Sorry, I'm getting excited. I got a lot to say
Mr.
tonight.
Stolle, are you representing yourself for community council?
I'm representing myself.
Thank you.
Yes. And I'm a 20-year resident of King David Drive, and I live at the end of the street abutting the proposed development with my wife and 3 children who are 2, 5, and 9. I'm not in opposition to the proposed subdivision. I think it's great, and as a professional architect and planner with 30 years of experience, what I am opposed to is the direct connection of connecting Winchester Street, Winchester Loop with King David. The reason is that King David is narrower than Winchester Street and Winchester Loop in the surrounding neighborhood. Winchester Drive is narrower than the proposed connection, so we're basically going to have a funneling effect down King David Drive. King David Drive does not have sidewalks on either side. King David Drive does not have any storm sewer drainage, and King David Drive also has a blind corner as you come around the bend that's fairly high that creates, I think, a traffic hazard for traffic passing through there. The proposed street connection will add an enormous amount of additional aggregate vehicle load onto King David Street, many more vehicles than King David was originally designed for. And if you count actually all of the lots on the neighborhood to the east side, there's actually 111 lots between Winchester, Chipwood, Rendon, Tempest, and Cathedral streets, and then 21 additional lots from the new subdivision, which if you just assume 2 cars per driveway and 2 round trips per day for all of those 132 lots, that's over 1,000 vehicle trips. And human nature is, you seek the path of least resistance, the shortest path, and King David Drive, being closest to Lake Otis, I believe would be a shortcut for not only, 100 trips per hour, but these 1,056 vehicle trips conservatively estimated each day. That's a lot of traffic to absorb for a little narrow street. Also, the additional stormwater that's going to flow from uphill will naturally seek its low point on King David, which happens right about at the bend at the blind spot. I understand the reason for connectivity for fire vehicles needing, at least 2 points of access, and the existing neighborhood to the east actually has 3. Connection to Abbott Road at Cathedral, connection to 88th at Rendon, and connection at 88th at Winchester Street. So I don't believe a 4th connection for fire truck access is absolutely essential. In fact, I think it's actually hazardous. So as an architect, planner, resident, and father of 3 in the neighborhood, I can't support connecting the neighborhoods, and I also can't support having denial of the variances. What's the point of having standards if you ignore them? Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Stoley? Mr. Cross has a question for you.
Just for clarification, your biggest concern is that this is more traffic than the road was designed for.
It's going to be an enormous additional amount of traffic. There's 21 lots on King David Street.
You said 1,000 vehicles a day?
Yeah, what I think that we need is a TIA to actually determine it. I just took a conservative estimate, 2 cars per house, 2 round trips a day, and came up with that number.
1,000 trips a day,
1,054.
additionally from 21. Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Thank you. You're next. Spell your last name for the record, please.
My name is Susan McGee, spelled M-A-G-E-E. My husband, Roger Besh, and I live at 9048 King David Drive. I've lived in King David since it was first developed in 1985. My husband and I have significant concerns about the traffic impacts associated with connecting King David with Winchester, which we have voiced at 2 previous meetings, one held by the builder in December, the second at the Abbott Loop Community Council January meeting. We also submitted written comments already and a petition that was signed by the residents of King David requesting a traffic study to identify and address the traffic impacts associated with connecting King David with Winchester. Please note that while our comments were counted as one submission, the attached petition was signed by 16 families in our subdivision, many of who are here today. Because we have also now had the opportunity to review the staff report that was posted on March 1st, I would like to supplement those comments here tonight. King David was platted 34 years ago. While the plat allowed for King David to connect with future subdivisions, it was the first subdivision developed in the immediate area and was surrounded by homesteads. One by one, the homesteads have turned into subdivisions, and there is now a maze of subdivisions that surround us that will now be able to use King David as a shortcut to access Abbott Road. Neither the plat application nor the staff report takes this important fact into consideration. They both only focus on the impact of the 21 new lots. King David's street design is inferior to the new and surrounding subdivisions. Our right-of-way is 10 feet less. We have no storm sidewalks or storm drains. The historical documents included in the staff report indicate that the 1984 board decision acknowledged that King David may serve as a connector to Abbott Road for adjacent unsubdivided parcels and recommended that King David's right-of-way be increased to 60 feet. That recommendation was not followed, and King David's right-of-way remains 10 feet less than the new and surrounding subdivisions. Please also note that the term used by the board in 1984 was may and not shall. While everyone we've spoken to keeps saying that King David has to be a through street because it was platted that way, there is no pre-established requirement to connect King David with Winchester. If King David and Winchester are not connected, the new subdivision will still have the required 2 points of access. Connecting the new subdivision to Winchester Loop and Winchester Street, which also connect with 88th and Elmore and Abbott, will provide the new subdivision with the required 2 points of access. So connecting King David with Winchester is not necessary.
Thank you. Your time is up. Are there any questions for Ms. McGee?
I have a question. Can she use my 3 minutes to finish?
That's my husband.
Yes.
Or he can come up and read the rest of it. That's okay.
He's entitled to come up and finish the rest of it.
All right.
And we don't have any questions from the board. Please.
My name is Roger. My name is Roger Besh. Last name is spelled B-E-S-H. I've been a resident in Alaska since 1949, so I've seen a lot of development, good and bad. So, was it number 6? 5. Both the plat application and the staff report talk about the importance of sidewalks for pedestrian safety, but only apply the value of the sidewalks to the new subdivision and subdivisions to the east and north that already have sidewalks. Both completely ignore the pedestrian safety hazard to King David where there are no sidewalks. The staff report narrowly focuses on traffic impact from the 21 new lots in its existence. Using the staff report's calculation by placing 21 lots with a conservative estimates and the 84 homes in the new subdivision and the surrounding subdivisions will use King David for access from Abbott Road. The number of daily trips will increase from 185 to over 971 daily trips. It pairs what John was talking about. Based on this larger perspective of traffic impact, an analysis is warranted. The municipality's current desire for connectivity should not turn a blind eye to pedestrian safety and quality of life. King David is not just a road, it is a neighborhood. Because King David has been a dead-end street for 34 years, coupled with its price range, proximity to schools, and area parks, the subdivision draws younger families with children. We have over 20 children, the majority of them are under 12. And some residents like ourselves have stayed long after the children have grown because King David is still an affordable, quiet, safe neighborhood. Connecting King David with Winchester will change all that. Because of the increased traffic, King David will no longer provide safe access for pedestrians, including children who are accustomed to playing outside in a safe environment. The mindset that King David has to be connected to Winchester because it was plotted this way 34 years needs to change. The question that should be asked under the current circumstance in the pedestrian safety impact to King David residents due to its inferior street design, should King David be connected to Winchester? We and the other residents of King David emphatically say no. The safety impact to our neighborhood and residents, including 20 children, are too great. We simply do not support the plat as proposed, and we want King David to remain a dead-end street. If the board determines otherwise, and the connection from King David to Winchester is retained, the question to the board needs to ask, how can safety impacts to King David be mitigated? There are many traffic calming options available. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I have one.
Yes.
So on this proposed subdivision, are you aware of where lots 13 and 14 are that abut Abbott Road?
Say that again?
Are you aware of where lots 13 and 14 are that abut Abbott Road?
I'd have to have the map in front of me. Quick.
In the middle there, down here, 13 and 14.
Yes.
So if we allow them to put the sidewalk through there, which gives them access to Abbott Road, wouldn't it be much farther to walk from the subdivision all the way around to get over to King David? It seems like the shortcut would be to go straight to Abbott Road, whether they're coming from the east or they're coming from the subdivision.
So the sidewalk that was proposed there is accessing to the bike pedestrian along Abbott Road.
Well, if anybody wanted to go to Abbott Road from the subdivision, the shortcut is through that new sidewalk, it would be a long ways to go through the King David subdivision.
It still doesn't mitigate the fact that King David is narrow and there are no sidewalks. So people walk through there. The residents that live on King David are using King David. So if there's increased traffic flow, this sidewalk, all the sidewalk is going to do is allow the residents from Mountain Meadows to go to the bike path. That's
Right,
all
but
it's going to do.
This would mitigate them going through your subdivision, the pedestrians. So there would be no additional, most likely, very few additional pedestrians going through your subdivision with the sidewalk that connects to Abbott.
I can't answer that, but it's possible. I still think people from Winchester Street and Loop will still be cutting through. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if that happens like that way. I just see it as a sidewalk out of Mountain Meadows. It's helpful for them.
And Mr. Cross has a question for you.
Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Mr. Besh. Your other concern was the traffic flow coming off Winchester, and I can understand that. It does look like that there's two exits. There's Winchester, which is 60 feet wide, exiting out, and then it continues through Cathedral. Or, depending on where you're at, coming out King David, and King David's only 50 feet wide. Why would, I guess, since Winchester is wider and a more gradual access than King David accessing out onto Abbott, why would all the traffic want to go King David? Why would it not naturally aggregate out the current flow that it's been, or at least be a 50-50, 60-40 split? Sounds like the hypothesis is that all the traffic's going to go to King David.
Those are two good questions. Right now, Winchester Loop accesses out to 88th, and they go to Elmore.
Yes, that's the other access if you wanted to head north.
And then Winchester Street goes out Abbott. So there's Rendon too. There's actually three exits out of there. So all of those people go to Abbott or 88th and out of Rendon. But so now the homes are going to be closer to the Mountain Meadows and King David. So those cars that would normally exit 88th are going to be coming through King David if the road goes through.
Why are they not exiting out?
It's a closer distance. It's shorter. It's a shorter distance. It's a shortcut. King David will turn into a shortcut, basically.
So the hypothesis is that the houses that are closer to 88th, instead of going out to Elmore, will wind through the subdivision to get out on Abbott.
Yeah, if I was coming home from Fred Meyer's, I would turn into King David, and then I would go down Winchester Loop or up Winchester Street. Instead of going up and out, going up Cathedral and out on Abbott, I would just turn right and go through King David.
Yeah, it'd be
so it's
interesting
picking up all of those additional homes.
Okay, so that's the hypothesis, is that the individuals that are back in there will snake through the subdivision rather than take the two turns out onto Abbott and then and hit the light.
Correct. And then the increase in Abbott and the increase, I mean, when I say increase, I mean the new development, Abbott Road and 88th, does provide access for those areas. And Mountain Meadows could access out through 88th or up to Cathedral and then out through Abbott also.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to know, too, that I'm for development in Anchorage because we have limited land here. I'm just more concerned on the safety issue.
Ms. Lipson has a question for you.
Mostly just want to thank you for your public comments tonight, and to note that I believe you got cut off by our buzzer, but we do have your written, you and your wife's written statements, which are pages 74 and 75 of our packet, which the commission's taken.
I appreciate it. May I submit this one tonight also? No, it's a different, we condensed it, and we just got the notes on March 1st from the board with some new changes in from the planning, so we added some.
We won't be able to review them, it's too late.
Okay.
But I think we are marking them as an exhibit. So
Well, we didn't have the information until March 1st how to respond effectively, because the planning just came out.
We'll accept them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Do I hand them to one of you?
sure whether this is polite or not. Hello, I don't know whether it's my turn or not.
It's your turn now.
Thank you so much. I'm Carol Combs, C-O-M-B-S. I also live on King David Drive, and I've been there since 1985. And I have a lot of the same concerns that my other neighbors have already voiced. But I have this map that I think shows you better where our concerns are. This, of course, is the proposed project. This blue line is where the new road is going to go. All of these orange pieces are people who potentially are going to cut through here once this is put in and come straight down through King David Drive. I used the ratio that was given earlier this evening of 16 to 185. I used it with this 112 lots there, and that would result in 1,295 trips per day coming down through here. Now, why are people going to do that? Because 88th does not go all the way through to Lake Otis. It's hard to get, if you live in this region, to get efficiently down to Lake Otis and Abbott. It dead ends right here where this map ends off. This is Spruce Brook Road. 88th dead ends there. So if you go to the left, you end up running through the subdivisions and you end out at Little Creek, which does hit Abbott. If you turn the other way on Spruce Brook, you can't get out of there until you get to 84th, and then you go down to 84th to get to Lake Otis. It's really cumbersome. If you go the other way up 88th and you try to get out on Elmore, it's really hard to make a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn. Make a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn out of Abbott in the morning, at lunchtime, in the evening. It's really hard. We're playing chicken with all those cars that are on Abbott Road. And we have those 20 kids living in our neighborhood who have to get on the school bus at that corner in the morning. We have no sidewalks. There's no place for them to walk. They walk in the street. When Abbott Road was reconstructed, where they did that upgrade, they put in new culverts there because the creek runs underneath it. And they moved the entrance to the bike path as well. So now, in order to get on the bike path, or for those kids to get at the school bus in the morning, they have to almost be out in the middle of Abbott Road where the traffic is zooming by in the morning to get to that spot, because it's dark and because there's also that snow buildup. So we're concerned about having all of that potential traffic coming through our subdivision, and we would like to have it closed off so that the sidewalks are going to dead end at the end of this new subdivision, and so the road should dead end at the end of that subdivision as well. I don't know if I used all my time or not, but that's all I have to say, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you. And Mr. Cross, did you have a question?
No, I apologize. I was staring at a map.
Okay. Are there any questions for Ms. Combs? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much. Oh, can I give you my map? Would that help you?
My name is Susan Clift, C-L-I-F-T. I live at 8990 Rendon, which is the corner of Rendon and Winchester. Just an observation, I think there have been numerous misstatements of what's Winchester and what's Winchester Loop and during the course of this. Second thing I wanted to say is I, of course, come from Freddy's going east, turning in at Cathedral. I seriously doubt that I would ever go through King David in order to get to my house, which is at the corner of Winchester and Rendon. The third question I have is about construction of all these sidewalks. As it is now, the sidewalk on Winchester, I think it's only on the west side, and it ends sort of at where my property ends. I notice there's none on the other side of the street. I notice that the sidewalks are functionally unusable probably close to 6 months of the year because of the snow storage. In fact, frequently the berm when it's plowed is, I've measured it as much as 6 feet out into the roadway. So sidewalks are totally unusable during the snow season. Even when they come by and take the berms back, they don't take it back to where the sidewalk is necessarily, which is still completely covered with snow.
Thank you. Are there?
Ma'am?
Yes.
I greatly appreciate
We have
it.
a question. Just one moment. We didn't get the spelling of your last name. Is it C-L-I-S-P?
C-L-I-F-T, Clift.
Thank you. And Mr. Cross has a question for you.
Thank you, Ms. Clift. So your concern was the sidewalks, just dealing specifically with this plat, this development, and that's the only one we're addressing. We're not doing anything outside that right now. What is your specific concern regarding the sidewalks in this area?
I'm just saying that the requirement for building sidewalks on both sides of the streets and all of these, I take it a vertical curb is different from what we have now. It's where it's basically just
It's called number
sidewalk
2 rolled.
just kind of blends into the street with just a little bit of a gutter. And it's promoted as providing great access for pedestrians. Well, the fact is, they're not used in the winter.
Okay, so
People have to walk in the streets in the winter. They're never plowed.
do you have a preference over the rolled, or, I mean, the rolled
I prefer
versus
the
the?
flat ones myself.
All right.
But, I mean,
snow removal.
to require the builder to build all kinds of expensive sidewalks that are going to be covered with snow much of the year. As a matter of fact, during the summer, when there isn't any snow, as often as not, people are walking on Winchester and Rendon in the street.
Thank you.
So, I mean, it seems like, they're imposing something on the builder that isn't going to be useful for much of the year, and other parts of the year often not used anyway. The kids play in the streets. I'm sure they play in the streets on King David.
Understood.
And they
Thank
certainly
you.
do on Winchester.
Excellent. I really appreciate your answer.
Thank you. May we have the next person that wishes to testify?
My name is Bruce Roberts, R-O-B-E-R-T-S. I'm president of the Abbott Loop Community Council.
Mr. Roberts, are you speaking on behalf of the Community Council?
Yes.
Then you have 5 minutes.
Yes. So at the January meeting of the Community Council, there was quite a bit of discussion about this specific project and another project on Lower Road in terms of traffic safety. And we also had one of the traffic safety engineers from the municipality come speak to people's concerns as well, because there were requests for a fire gate or for redoing the plat such that there was access to Abbott Road. And I don't think either one of those are necessarily appropriate. The Community Council did not come out with a resolution, or we did not support the petition that the folks had represented at the Community Council. In terms of the issues that are before you about the variances, I think the Community Council goes along the lines of the staff recommendations that vertical curbs, we would like to see curbs and sidewalks installed as much as possible to the municipal guidelines. I think this will improve traffic safety, certainly for people walking, throughout the subdivision. All of the plats that we had seen until the last week or so did not show sidewalk placement. So I can't speak for the Community Council specifically about the placement, but I think that having that access between lots 13 and 14 to Abbott is a good idea. There are other curbs along the Little Brook and adjacent subdivisions that are the rolled curbs, and there's significant problems with people parking up onto the sidewalks or blocking. And so I think the vertical curbs and sidewalks as much as possible would be along the lines of what we would like to see.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Roberts? Mr. Cross.
We've heard a lot of public testimony regarding the traffic concerns. Can you speak as to what the traffic, you said that there was a gentleman from the municipality traffic department who came and spoke at yours. Would you mind sharing briefly
Sure.
maybe an aha or a revelation that you learned from his participation?
So this is one of the traffic safety people that we deal with quite a bit because it often concerns speed humps, and that's something that we have to deal with traffic calming issues throughout the entire Abilene Community Council area, and once a year we're asked to prioritize. And so there was some interest in having a traffic study, but Cathedral did have speed humps installed last year. And it was one of the 4 speed calming installations that took place last year within our community council. So he felt that these speed humps on Cathedral were kind of a precursor or a good beginning to calming down the traffic in that area. I have lived in this area since 1986, so I've seen a lot of the development. And it seems like King David and Cathedral have always been kind of dead-end streets where, you wonder why. Why wasn't there a cul-de-sac or some kind of end there? So they seem to be engineered to connect together. And the state, I believe in the recommendations, was noted that they do not want access to Abbott Road. It's my understanding that access points to Abbott need to be at least 330 feet apart. And so King David and Cathedral, you couldn't have anything in between those 2 locations. As for traffic patterns, I don't see, again, this is me personally more, but I don't see people cutting through King David as much as people might be concerned, but there will be significantly more than what they currently have. I agree that Cathedral is a wider road, and some people will be going out to East 80th Avenue to get to Elmore to go north.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much for your testimony and your time.
Sure.
May we have the next person wishing to testify?
My first name is Dennis, last name Mosier, M-O-S-E-R, and I've lived on King David Drive for about 15, 16 years. A very quiet street, fell in love with it, that's why I bought it, because I was going to raise kids. So with the development of a new subdivision next door, the issue is safety. King David is, again, a narrow street. I have a video of trying to drive down King David with all the cars parked there. You know that game that you have to move the little squares around to get to there? I'm not kidding. When we talk about more traffic, that's the problem. I have a trailer, I have a motorhome. We don't have covenants. I don't know what other subdivisions do around there. But when I go to hook up to my trailer or go down my King David Street, and I live at the end of the subdivision there, I can look all the way out. I'm looking for traffic. If I see traffic coming, I can't go through there with a truck and trailer if there's cars parked. Summertime, people like to have 4th of July parties. 1 or 2 people on our street have a party, you are not going up and down there, I'm telling you. You're going to traffic jam. So it's the traffic flow. My daughter teaches piano on the street. If you come to my house, I will warn you, be careful. There are kids, they will come out in front of you. So then it could be, well, parents need to take care of their kids. But that's not the issue. The issue is traffic. So if we could dead end and not connect into the new subdivision, that would be the safest. So anyway, pictures are 1,000 words. So the corner of King David on the map, on the plot map there, where they plow the snow in the center, 2 cars cannot go around that corner at the same time. Now, that's just with the traffic, and there's only 5 houses past me, 4 houses. So if 2 cars can't go around that corner, how are you going to flow traffic when they plow snow there? So King David's not large enough, it's not wide enough. Safety issue, if there's any other way around this, you need to dead end King David, not connect into that next subdivision. We don't have room for sidewalks, that's already been an issue. If you put sidewalks in, that loses all the trees that we have in our yards because they're right next to the sidewalks. So anyway, I live on the street, so I'm here to support the no traffic through King David. So I have a video. Come down to King David on a busy day. You're not coming down there. You will look for traffic. It's trying to move the little squares to get through. Okay? That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Cross has a question for you.
So your testimony is that using a trailer or anything down your narrow road gets jackknifed and that there's lots of traffic and it's hard to navigate, which I'll be honest with you, makes me think why more people would use Cathedral if it's difficult to get down. And I guess my other thought on here is, would not that being connected through, and it looks like it was fully intended, that's how King David and Winchester appointed, like this was planned. The cul-de-sac in King David is not built to Muni standards for a fire truck access. So part of what they're going to want, why the fire department wants this, as part of that is that they need an access for a large truck to get down there to turn around or to work through. So that actually enhances safety, that a fire truck can get through that neighborhood to access houses, either way to make it easier if your house is on fire. Wouldn't it also make it easier for a trailer to get out, knowing that now if there's cars, you have another alternate route that's wider, it's 10 feet wider, by the way, a full lane wider than what you currently have to access to exit with your trailer. Wouldn't that be more convenient?
Is that the question?
That's a question.
Okay. That possibly could be more convenient, but that still doesn't stop everyone that will utilize King David to get back to their house. That will not stop people coming through King David to get out to Abbott. Doesn't stop the increase in traffic. Helps me with my trailer, but doesn't stop the increase in traffic by plugging us into a subdivision. And that's our concern, is people getting hurt on a street that's narrow, and now you park cars along that narrow street. This is where people live. This is their house. This is where they raise their kids. Their kids are going to go outside. And I'm telling you, I have almost hit these kids more than one time because they're kids. It's a street. It's a narrow street. We don't have sidewalks. You can't put sidewalks in there. So would it help me? Possibly. Would it take the life of a child by moving more traffic through here? Possibly. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for staff. With the issue he's raising with the snow piled up in the current cul-de-sac, how would that change?
Mr. Chair, explain, is it which cul-de-sac?
What we just heard as testimony that on the bulb of King David, the snow gets piled up there in the winter. Would that continue to be an issue, or would that snow, once the connectivity goes through, be removed?
Well, I can't speak for street maintenance, but they may, instead of just doing what they call the cold wrap, where they leave the snow there, because it is a dead end now, they may, if that goes through, I'm more than likely they're going to be maintaining that to a different level, where they're not letting the snow, they're not wrapping the snow in the center of the cul-de-sac. They're going to go ahead and clear it all the way out.
Thank you. May we have the next person wishing to testify? You can only testify once on this matter. How many more people how many more are planning to testify tonight? 1, 2, 3, 4. Would you guys mind moving up or even standing in line? You don't all have to be in line at once. Your turn.
Okay, my name is Steve Shamburek. It's Shamburek. I live on the east side of this property on Chipwood, And I've been very lucky to look out on this wooded 5 acres for 30 years. I knew Betty Ray Mattoon, who'd homesteaded the property in 1947. I was probably one of her primary caregivers. We talked. She knew when she passed that the land would be developed and others would live there. Now, I have driven that area for 30 years and lived in the broader area for 35. There's going to be 21 homes there. I do realize that there's going to be a number of cars that will need to access the road.
Would you mind raising the microphone up?
Okay, I'm sorry. I do realize that there will be, a number of vehicles that are going to access Abbott. The state DOT said that Abbott is a state road, and they do have very specific regulations, and there's not an option to go ahead and access Abbott directly. So I understand that for a variety of safety reasons, they're going to have to access both Winchester and King David. I do believe that is safer. There is no doubt that there will be more traffic. I think Mr. Cross had said it might be 60-40 or 50-50. I have a hunch that a lot of people are just going to continue to do what they've done. I know I'm not going to change my driving patterns. I just am used to going Winchester and then Cathedral. I also think, quite ironically, with all of the vehicles that are on King David, that there are some individuals who may take that route as a shortcut, and they'll discover that it may take longer. Actually, the vehicles, ironically, would serve almost as barriers, and it's going to be a lot quicker to go ahead and access Abbott by a Cathedral. So, I'm disappointed. There's going to have to be 21 homes. That's progress. There's going to be traffic. But I do think that the proposal to have the traffic access both King David and Cathedral is really the only compromise when you consider all of the other factors. It's unfortunate there's going to be more traffic, but we're all going to have to share that traffic. With regard to the sidewalks, I think that it would be desirable to have the south side sidewalk and what I think is called the stem and bulb sidewalk, because that would tie into the pathway between the other two properties. I'd be willing to, if you all wanted to entertain the idea of vacating that north sidewalk, because it doesn't really tie into anything else in the neighborhood. And just my concerns are safety. My other concerns really are environmental, that concrete and cement really do use a lot of resources. So I would, be in favor if you wanted to vacate that sidewalk.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Ms. Lipson has a question for you.
Thank you. Do you in your subdivision have rolled curbs?
We have rolled curbs, and I have mixed feelings about rolled curbs and hard sidewalks, and I've been thinking about it a great deal, and I'm neutral. You all decide. I see the advantages and disadvantages. I grew up out east with the hard sidewalks. Sometimes when the crew comes in to plow the snow, I think it's easier when you've got the rolling sidewalks. And yet I do understand the concerns of staff and others that when you have the rolling sidewalks, a lot of people end up parking either up on the sidewalks or just up on their yards. So there's a logic to it.
And then in your subdivision, do you find that people are parking, half on that curb, I guess, with the rolled?
Not too many, but there are some. I don't think it's a problem, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Skylar Quinn, a local civil engineer, and I'm here to voice my strong support behind the petitioner's request for a variance from a Type 1 barrier curb to a Type 2 rolled curb. I'd like to address the staff report on why to not grant the variance and why I disagree with those points.
Get your name again real quick and then spell your last name.
Skylar Quinn, Quinn. So the staff report says that the barrier curb helps contain low-speed traffic within traveled surfaces, and that it discourages parking on sidewalks. So I think everyone here at some point has tried parallel parking their car downtown or next to another barrier curb, crank the wheel a little bit too hard, and the next thing you know, you're up on top of the curb. That's how easy it is to drive onto a barrier curb. It's far from being a protective barrier for pedestrians using the sidewalk, and it's fairly easy to park on. It's also illegal to park on the sidewalk as it is. The report says that the rolled curb makes it easier to widen the driveways beyond the maximum allowable width, which increases area pedestrians are exposed to while cars are backing up. I haven't heard of any instances of people on the sidewalk getting hit by cars backing out of their driveway. Even if there are a few isolated incidents where this has happened, it isn't a big enough concern to require a barrier curb and all the associated problems that come with it. And last and most important is staff's point that a 15-foot curb transition is the max required by code, which directly addresses the petitioner's concerns. That statement essentially says that the 8.33% max ADA slope requirement is waived, so a 15-foot ramp would be required instead of a 30-foot ramp. 8.33% slope is maximum slope for a reason. It's because that's the maximum slope that's tolerable for a wheelchair to go up. Exceeding that slope essentially puts a sidewalk for this subdivision and any other subdivision off limits to the ADA community. Why provide a sidewalk that only caters to the able body if we don't need to? Why provide all the unnecessary ramps to disabled people, even if they do meet ADA slope? There's an easy solution right in front of us. That solution is what we've been doing for the past however many years. And it's a rolled curb in residential areas. We should be building subdivisions that everyone can enjoy. Lastly, the MOA Design Criteria Manual, page 56, states that a Type 1 barrier curb and gutter is for use along primary streets as well as in commercial and industrial areas. Type 2 rolled curb and gutter is for use along secondary residential streets. We should go back to the standards opposed to the new code change. The barrier curb simply doesn't make sense. It forces a developer to predetermine their driveway location. It's a far less user-friendly experience, especially to people with disabilities. There's going to be patchwork littered all over these subdivisions. Everyone's going to be ripping up curb, gutter, sidewalk, asphalt, patching it, and diminishing the life of that product.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Ms. Lipson has a question for you.
I actually have a question for staff at this point. When was code changed for the Type 1 preference?
Through the chair, Ms. Lipson, it was 2013.
And so I have maybe a sense that this might be a reoccurring theme in some of our platting hearings, and I'm just wondering through the chair for staff if there's possible discussions of code change, because I personally don't think this is not necessarily the appropriate forum to be addressing this type of policy action.
Through the chair, Ms. Lipson, yes, there has been discussions internally, the planning department, the traffic department, private development, fire department, about rolled curb versus barrier curb. We're obviously, as you see in our staff report, we are opposed to the idea of going back to rolled curb. We think that the vertical curb is appropriate. However, we would take strongly the considerations that the Platting Board would have in reviewing these variances for vertical curb.
And then my final question is, the gentleman who's sitting between the two, Sean, yes, and what's your name for the record, sir?
Brandon Telford. I'm with the private development section.
And are you here to speak specifically on traffic or the curb or neither?
I came to answer any questions that the board might have regarding the opposition to all the variances, specifically the vertical curb type and the sidewalk. I work for Development Services, and My authority isn't fully underneath the municipal engineer, but I work closely with the municipal engineer as well as the municipal traffic engineer. And collectively, development services, the municipal engineer and the municipal traffic engineer are all on board with opposing the variances.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Quinn? Thank you very much. Thanks. We have more? Yes.
Hello, my name is Megan Starr. I live at 9050 King David Drive. I've been a resident there for almost 6 years now. Part of the reason why we chose to buy a house there was because of the safety of having it be a dead end. I have 4 kids, 12, 8, 6, and 3 months. And it's, sorry, I'm not good at public speaking. You know, their safety is extremely important, and there's a lot of parents in our neighborhood who, you know, we love to be able to let our kids go out and play, and we feel safe doing that because there isn't a lot of traffic coming through, and because the people who are driving down that street are people who know us. They know the amount of kids that are always out running around, so they're careful, you know. And as my neighbors have pointed out, you know, we don't have sidewalks. Our street is smaller. So even when my kids walk to take the bus in the morning, they're walking just on the side of the road. And that already makes me nervous, along with the major traffic on Abbott and the fact that they pretty much have to stand like in the road to wait for the bus. But because we don't have a ton of through traffic, I do feel a bit safer knowing that, you know, it's more so the traffic over here that they have to worry about, not the traffic coming through. And so the idea of opening up that road and having the traffic come through from Winchester and into King David, I feel would very negatively affect our quality of life and the reasons why we've all bought our houses and chose to live in this neighborhood and raise our kids in this neighborhood. Yeah, I just feel like it would not be a good thing to connect the roads.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, my name is John Linnell, Linnell. I live on King David, and I would like to echo the concerns that have been brought by the neighbors of King David regarding safety. There is no question, it is plain as the nose on each one of your faces, that connecting this road will decrease the safety along King David because of the additional traffic that will come to King David, which is currently a dead-end road. Was it set up to potentially be connected? Absolutely it was. Does it have to be? No, it doesn't. It is up to you as the board to get to make that decision. Also, at the December 27th, 2018 meeting, the developer's representative explained to the residents of King David that this is not their preferred alternative. It's probably the first time you've heard that. Their preferred alternative is actually 22 homes and only a connection over at Winchester Street and Winchester Loop. But because of staff at the municipality said it has to connect, the developer is obviously going to take the path of least resistance, just like the drivers will in terms of taking the shortest route to get out to Abbott Road if they are headed to the west. So it is up to you to look at and consider, does this make the most sense, the greatest public good, the least public harm? In terms of the public good, if there's an additional lot within that subdivision, it means increased revenue for the municipality of Anchorage. It leaves status quo on King David. The safety remains as it is today and does not decrease. Does it potentially leave some potential emergency where an emergency vehicle has to go around a little bit further? Yes, it does. But is reducing the absolute for certain reduced safety along King David greater or lesser than that?
Thank you. And Ms. Wilson has a question for you.
Actually, this question's for staff. So if I'm hearing the testifier correctly, the developer didn't want to provide this connectivity? Is that correct? That wasn't their original plan?
Through the chair, Ms. Weltine, I believe this is the first we've heard of the developer not wanting this connection. In fact, the preliminary plat that was proposed showed the connection.
Okay, then I'll save my question for when we have the applicant back up. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michel Villon, V as Victor, I-L-L-O-N. I live on I'm the original owner of 3860 Winchester Loop. And the thing is, I cannot conceive only one exit to that subdivisions going to Winchester, because during the winter time, the Muni is delighted to put the snow, which rightly they got the legal right to do so, right in front of my property, because it's one of the few places where snow can be stored, and then it reduces the street. If one car park, it's one-way street. One thing is, we are here to ask for variance. Why can't we ask for a variance to have an exit on Abbott? And because what? We are few feet short of the distance, so why can't a variance exist and the traffic exit? And then everybody is happy on each side of the subdivisions. So that's all what I have to say. One thing for the gutter, it'd be nice to have one of those straight gutter because Winchester Loop, when it turns, it's Winchester Street, right where the house is built now, because we don't have any sewage. Street seaward. We don't have any, so it's the water running from that hill down and piling exactly at the end of Winchester Loop and Street. So it'd be nice to have a gutter to redirect the flow a block further down where it can drain into his seaward city drain, because we don't have any. Okay, that's all what I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Hearing and seeing none, thank you very much. And is there anyone else wishing to testify tonight? Anyone else at all? This is like your last chance. Seeing none, may we have the petitioner's representatives back for your rebuttal?
Craig Bennett with S4, and main rebuttal I just wanted to bring up, at the pre-app meeting we had before the community council, traffic department fire was there, and I asked traffic if we could do a dog leg instead of connect through to King David, and traffic department said no, connection would be required. So the prelim plat that I drafted up and showed at the community council meeting was showing the connection, the same plat that you're looking at today. And I let the community council know that it's not up to us, it's up to fire and traffic is requiring it. And any question on that? Okay, I'll let Grant talk to the vacation or the variance.
Yeah, so a couple items. One thing, I know the last gentleman, I didn't catch his name, spoke on drainage, and we started looking at the preliminary drainage design, and the plan is actually to, he's right, the area to the east does flow into this property, so it will be collected in the storm drain as part of our drainage design, which should resolve that issue. In addition, I guess just on the variance for the curb again, it seems like it really comes down to a staff that the issues for vertical curb are people park on the sidewalks and they have the potential to widen their driveways. These really seem like code enforcement issues. It's not worth saddling the developer with a lot of additional costs and inflexibility. And I know, Ms. Lipson, you mentioned that this is maybe going to become a repeating pattern, and I think that will be the case. I know the code was written a while back, but there was a grace period, so it's only in the last year or two that this has been actually held to this standard. So I think it's likely that you'll be seeing these on everyone.
Thank you. And are there any questions for the petitioner's representative?
I have a question for staff.
Okay, Ms. Wilson and then Mr. Cross.
Through the chair, staff, is there a way that, or would this be prohibited by fire and traffic, that we wouldn't have to require them to do this access?
Through the chair, Ms. Weltzine, in order to not provide the access, you would have to postpone the plat tonight, and they'd have to revise the plat and come back with a new submittal. I will mention that planning staff is adamantly opposed to not making that connection. We've heard from the public. We understand that there are traffic concerns, there are pedestrian safety concerns, but from a planning perspective, connectivity of subdivisions is desired. It's been noted through agency comments that connection should be made. I think that Randy Ribble, Assistant Traffic Engineer, speaks to that connection in his email to one of the members of the public. I think it's in your laid on the table tonight. So
it is, and I read that email, and I also saw that he attached a public comment, and the public comment referenced how she attached photos to her public comment, but we didn't get those photos in our packet.
I don't believe that we in planning got those photos either, so we weren't able to provide them to you.
Okay. And then just to the applicant, just for theoretical purposes, if you didn't, would you be agreeable to not providing that access?
I think the issue is postponing it would make us lose this construction season. So,
okay.
It's kind of a...
Kind of past the point now.
Is that...
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cross.
Regarding the barrier curb versus the rolled curb and gutter, I don't know how accurate Google Images is, but that's what I try to reference because it's been some time since I've driven through that neighborhood. But essentially, if it did a barrier curb, your section of 21 homes would be the only area that I can tell that would have barrier curb. All surrounding properties which have sidewalks and curb and gutter. It's all rolled curb. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
So it'd be more uniform. Now I understand because you're building and so you came later that you don't have that you're operating under a different code set. But it would be, I guess to me, okay, it just puts things in perspective because we've got rolled curb and gutter, then we do have barrier curb, and then we'd have neither in an area of 200 feet. That'd be...
Yeah, it's bordered on both sides so Winchester and King David both have rolled curb. So it would transition.
King David doesn't have any sidewalks.
Correct.
Winchester Loop does. So we go from sidewalk with rolled curb to sidewalk with barrier curb to rolled curb with no sidewalk.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lipson.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff. So in looking over some of the public comments, it looked like there were proposed alternatives that the community was requesting, including traffic impact analysis and fire barriers, I think, or fire gate, which I'm not sure what that is. So one, I would like to know what that is, and two, can you speak to those requests by the community?
Through the chair, Ms. Lipson, so I believe fire gate, which is also called emergency access gate, is the red gates that you see in some areas. I'd like to turn your attention to, it's what's passed out, the two-page F1E supplemental packet number 1. And and it's what Jana had mentioned earlier. It's a statement there by Randy Ribble, the assistant traffic engineer. And it is actually pretty factual there. He's addressing Brandy's comments to the planning and traffic department. So there is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down. They talk about the emergency access gate. It says the traffic department will always object to installation of gating public roadways. Public roadways are conveyed from the original property owner for the use of all members of the public. Closing a roadway results in additional safety issues within the impacted subdivisions through and hinders emergency vehicle response times and potentially create a safety hazard if the access to main road was ever hindered due to unforeseen emergencies. It also addresses did you have a question about the King David Road traffic trips?
I guess just
The TIA?
Yeah.
So I guess the third paragraph down, it sort of touches on that. It says King David Drive is constructed to local road standards and is capable of supporting vehicle volumes up to 2,000 vehicles daily. And the existing 16 lots along King David Drive, along with the volume for the proposed subdivision to the east, which is what we're here for tonight, are anticipated to be less than 25% of this threshold. It says the road appears to be constructed at 32 feet wide, which is capable of supporting parking on at least one side of the roadway, and then the remaining portion of that right-of-way would be sufficient to support installation of a 5-foot sidewalk on either side of King David. So you have a 32-foot paved, but you have 50 feet of right-of-way there. And then the 25% for the threshold, traffic doesn't feel that it would warrant any type of traffic impact. It's meeting the standards for a local road.
Great, thank you.
I have a question, and then Mr. Cross. I actually have to. Would you mind reading the remainder of this document into the record for us, please?
Sure. Let's see here. So the document starts off with, the department has reviewed the comments and concerns expressed in the information provided below. We provide agency comments in regard to the subject plat consistent with the current municipal codes and standards for the new subdivision. King David Drive is 50-foot right-of-way that was constructed to municipal standards and codes in effect at the time the subdivision was built in the late 1980s. The subdivision and the public right-of-way was designed with a layout to make the connection to Winchester Loop when the adjacent lot to the east was developed in the future. In fact, no turnaround at the current east end of King David Drive was either platted nor constructed, consistent with the expectation that the road would be extended through upon subdivision of the property in case S12464. It speaks to a picture that was provided. I believe it was with people parked in the roadway. It clearly shows what is typical in most residential neighborhoods throughout Anchorage in winter months, when traveled sections of the right-of-way is narrower due to snow storage, and more importantly, when two cars are illegally parked per existing municipal code Title 9.30.50. Parking to not obstruct traffic. It goes on to speak in regard to requests for the installation of emergency access fire gate. I read that portion of it. And then the next paragraph is, although the term cut-through traffic is often used in the context of intra-neighborhood vehicle activity, in fact, cut-through traffic from a professional and technical standpoint exists only when vehicles have neither a trip origin nor destination within the immediate neighborhood, and drivers are attempting to avoid, for example, nearby signalized and or congested arterial intersections. So you're basically cutting through the neighborhood to avoid Abbott and Elmore signalized intersection per se. It goes on to thanks Ms. Stratman for expressing her concerns and adding to the public comment to the Platting Board.
Thank you.
And that was by Randy Ribble, engineer with Assistant Traffic Engineer Department.
Thank you. That was my question. Thank you very much. Okay, and of the petitioners, there was a question, or there was an issue raised about stormwater draining into the King David. Is it your design that the stormwater will be captured and routed into a storm drain and not go onto King David Drive?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. Part of the municipal code is that all the drainage from this site will have to be basically held to their standard, which usually involves not increasing the post-development flows to the pre-development, but the plan is to capture all runoff and not let it enter into King David.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the petitioner's representatives tonight? Mr. Seward.
Through the chair, question for 4 questions. One for Mr. Grant, and I think I know the answer, but the 6-inch sidewalk thickness that you guys oppose, the reason the city's asking for that, I suggest, is that with an unknown location of the driveway, that's probably the requirement for load-bearing weight?
That's correct. They're saying that the rolled curb makes it easier for the developer to construct the driveway, but then they're saying that they want just kind of whole cloth, everything thickened, just in case a driveway goes anywhere that...
If it was a fixed location, it would probably be a 4-inch thickness, sidewalk thickness or something?
There's still the code requirement that where the driveway enters the roadway at the sidewalk, it has to be 6 inches thick. So
outside the driveway, or to the right or left of the driveway, would it still?
It can be 4 inches. Okay. Yes. Okay. So that code requirement is still there and will still be addressed with rolled curb.
Because the driveways are unknown, they're going to require 6 inches for the whole length of the sidewalks.
That's what they're recommending. Yes.
Okay. And I've got 3 other questions, probably for staff. Comment on page 56 that Mr. Quinn stated about the locations of road areas. Is that a true statement for this there of type 1 requirement?
Through the chair, Mr. Stewart, let's see here, page 56, and then where were you looking?
He made the statement that the barrier curb was required for commercial streets. I'm not reading it.
Yeah. Brandon Telford will be able to answer that, speak to that.
Yeah, so I believe what Mr. Quinn was referring to was the design criteria manual, which is a document that guides all most elements of design within the city. Has a chapter on drainage, has a chapter on trails. One of the chapters is on streets. That document, the current version of it, was written in or adopted in 2007. And we're currently in the process of updating it to a new version. It's in draft form. It hasn't been available to the public yet. But the code changes are more recent than the DCM, and I suspect the new DCM will account for the code changes and update those that criteria to reflect that all streets should have vertical curb with the exception of the radius of the cul-de-sac.
Okay, that answers it. Then page 39, there's looks like a design standard, and I question the ADA standards of 2%, and I've just personally seen inspectors with the smart levels, they're almost kind of anal sometimes of 2.1% or 0.5%. And my question is that from that driveway, that 8.33%, is that a fairly accurate? I mean, it depends on the road grade overall, but if that was a flat, say that was a flat road, is that 8.33? Is that a fairly correct?
So, in general, the 8.33 max is a maximum in the same respect as the 2% maximum is a maximum, but there's a document put out by the U.S. Access Board, and the U.S. Access Board is actually the agency responsible for developing the standards that become part of the Americans with Disabilities Act and they get codified in federal law as part of the act. And the U.S. Access Board has put out a document. I wrote down the name because I knew it was Proposed Right-of-Way Guidelines is the name of the document that the U.S. Access Board has put out. It's been out for comment for many years, out for public comment. It hasn't been finalized, but both the municipality and the United States Department of Transportation Highways, U.S. Highways, has recognized the document as being the best practices for accessibility within the right-of-way. And that document, one of the things it does is it allows the running slope of sidewalks to match the running slope of a road, so that a typical running slope of a sidewalk is maximum 5%. Anytime a road exceeds 5%, you would have a sidewalk that would not be compliant with ADA if it weren't for this document that allows the sidewalk to match the grade of the road and therefore exceed 5%. Similar to that, the document allows curb ramps in the cases of roads that exceed grades where an 8.33% curb ramp could be constructed within 15 feet. The document allows those curb ramps to exceed that maximum 8.33% in those cases. The requirement is that you simply have to extend your ramp out to 15 feet and no further, and mass our standard specifications for the municipality, they reflect that, and that's what page 39 shows. They show 5% greater, and then they show the uphill length of 15 feet. That's consistent with the guidance from the Access Board.
Okay, thank you. And I think you answered my last question on page 5, the requirement to construct the type 2 curb and gutter, type 2 the rolled curb at the cul-de-sac bulb. And I imagine that requirement by code is because the lot width at the radiuses are considerably smaller than on the more rectangular lots?
It's specific to how maintenance plows cul-de-sacs. Maintenance actually, they turn their blade one direction when they're going down a straight line, and they actually maintain that same direction on their blade when they go into a cul-de-sac, but they actually go through the cul-de-sac backwards of what a vehicle would typically go through the cul-de-sac, and so that puts the leading edge of the blade at the front as opposed to at the back. And with the type 1 curb and gutter, anytime they hit a transition or they hit an expansion joint, it's easy for the blade, because of the way it's sticking out, to get caught in those places. And one of several things happen. They break their grader, or the grader comes to a sudden stop, and the driver gets injured, or the blade builds up a little bit of pressure and then pops out of wherever it's at and potentially knocks over a mailbox or hits a car. So maintenance was very adamant that for their operations, they need to have that type 2 curb and gutter in the cul-de-sac, and the risk to pedestrians at the end of a cul-de-sac is also much lower than it is along the tangent, the straight section. So we felt that that request for maintenance was certainly a reasonable request.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your answers.
Ms. Lipson.
Thanks. I have a question for staff about on page 21 of our packet, the additional recommendation from private development that each lot within the subdivision shall apply for and receive approval for a driveway permit from the muni prior to approval of a building permit. And I think that's a new request that we haven't seen before, and I was hoping you could speak to it.
Yes. Okay. So as part of the subdivision process, when we have a new subdivision come in, and then we get building permits for the new subdivision, those building permits are not required to receive a driveway permit. It's just the way our process currently works. And one of the downsides of that is that if a homeowner widens their driveway, we have no document to go back and look at later to decide where it is, what width the driveway was permitted at, and where it was permitted on their land. So one of the advantages of new code and the requirement to go to that vertical type curb and gutter is to establish that where the driveways are going to be, what the maximum width is going to be for the driveway, and then require, in order for a homeowner to modify that, they'd need to modify the curb and therefore come in and get a right-of-way permit. And they wouldn't be able to do it kind of on their own as they currently do by just adding some asphalt. And so we'd have a good record of what the driveways look like based on just the fact that they have to come in for the right-of-way permit. That would establish the record. And so since the petitioner requested the variance to the curb type, we decided that to mitigate the possibility of continuing with the type 2 curb and gutter, the rolled type, that we would alter our process for the subdivisions where those variances were granted. So through the plat note, our current process of essentially a de facto right-of-way permit for new buildings within those subdivisions would change to, okay, now those buildings within those subdivisions where they received the variance would come in for a right-of-way permit, and we would have a document to look back on in case a homeowner widens their driveway. And Dave asked me to speak to the other items that are contained in here. Okay, so the 6 inches, I think the discussion around the 6 inches was correct in that one of the advantages of using that vertical type curb and gutter and establishing where those driveways locations are going to be is that you can thicken the thicken the sidewalk to be more resilient to those trips where the vehicles are going to be crossing the sidewalk. And when you take the vertical curb away and you go back to the rolled curb, you don't know during design where those crossings are going to be, and therefore we requested collectively, again, it involved private development, but it also involved the municipal traffic engineer and the municipal engineer, director of development services, collectively agreed that we should request that a subdivision install 6-inch sidewalks as opposed to 4-inch, so that wherever the driveway lands, the sidewalk will already be thickened and ready for that additional load.
Could you just require, so if you were getting a driveway permit, could you require as a condition of that driveway permit that the sidewalk be 6 inches where the driveway crosses it?
So by the time the driveway permit would come in, the sidewalk would already be installed.
Okay, I have a second question. What is the likelihood that there will be, so my understanding of one of the variances is that there will only be sidewalks on one side of, I think on the southern part of lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it likely or foreseeable that sidewalks will be put in on King David Drive and Winchester Loop? If someone could speak to if there's existing sidewalks on Winchester Loop. Sorry, we've been going for a while.
There is a sidewalk on the south side of Winchester Loop.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there one on the north side of Winchester Loop?
There's the one.
Yes, on Winchester Street. Oh, the loop? No, it's just on the south side, I believe.
Okay, but then on
It's
Winchester.
an L, like imagine an L shape there with.
And then on Winchester Street, there's on both sides?
No, one side.
One side, okay. So
Yeah.
the request is to just do one side consistent with the other connecting subdivision. Okay. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and I have several questions. One, when this plat application was submitted, was it anticipated that there would be the sidewalk that connects from the subdivision to Abbott?
Mr. Chair, yeah, they showed that on their preliminary plat. They show the 5 foot on each side walkway easement.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was anticipated. There would be a walkway connection from the cul-de-sac out to the Abbott bike trails that existed.
Thank you. And from the petitioner's representatives on the, have you looked at the historical air photos of the surrounding subdivisions with respect to how the vehicles are parked? And are they parking on, well, they don't have sidewalks, so are they parking across the curbs?
Through the chair, yeah, we have looked at some of the photos. I know there are instances where people park along the street, not necessarily over the curb, but there, like most neighborhoods, are instances where people are parked along the street, which narrows the travel way. I know this is kind of maybe counterintuitive, but when people are parked along a street like King David, it actually lends towards a safer passage and more deters people from driving through there because it doesn't feel safe to drive at a fast speed. So oftentimes, I, for instance, park our car on our street to slow people down. But it's, I know it's a bit counterintuitive, but that often happens. And then I'd like to touch on one point, if I may, on staff's comment about the curb transitions. He mentioned that the maximum transition length is 15 feet. 15 feet transition on either side of a 14-foot driveway results in 44 feet of either transition or depressed curb. So on a 50-foot wide R1 lot, that means you have 6 feet of actual vertical curb on that lot frontage. So it's even if 15 feet is the max, there's still you get the huge up and down effect without the vertical curb.
Thank you, and I think you're going to have some serious talking with staff in the future about this. I looked at the air photos, and the reason I'm asking is I looked at on Google Earth at air photos that go back to 1996, so they're available from 1996 to 2014, and I found in that period of time one car parked on the curb in one subdivision and one car on the other. And I found very few cars parked on the street. So I haven't lived in the subdivision. I haven't driven through the subdivision. I'm just looking at historical photos. So is this typical, or are there a lot more cars on the street? Because I'm not looking at nighttime parking. The photos are taken in the middle of the day.
I've driven through the subdivision just in preparation, and there was one car parked on the side of Winchester Loop, I believe. Again, it was during the daytime. I can't explicitly speak towards what it looks like in the evening.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Are there any further questions of the petitioner's representative? We don't have any more questions. You have 58 seconds left for rebuttal if you wish to use it. Excuse me just a second, sir. The testimony is closed. You have 58 seconds left if you wish to use it.
Yeah, just one more quick point of clarification. I know there's a lot of discussion about the sidewalks. The variance request is just to install sidewalk on the south side of the proposed connection road. It's not to install no sidewalk through there, but just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. And I will now close the public testimony portion, and the matter rests with the board. And I recommend that we take let's take a 5-minute break and we'll be back at our break's over. We're going to continue, and the matter now rests with the board. So in the case of S12464, Mountain Meadows Estate Subdivision, lots 1 through 21, may I have a positive motion for approval of the request for vacation elimination of 33 feet of roadway and utility easement, patent 1138-516, recorded June 12, 1953, book 91, page 358, along the eastern boundary of the subdivision, subject to one, recording a suitable plat within 24 months of approval and any approved time extensions.
Okay, so we're just dealing with the vacation elimination.
Ms. Lipson and Ms. Wilson seconds, and I read the motion. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I will be, I need to state the motion.
Yes, please, state
Okay.
the motion.
In case S12464, I move to approve the request for vacation elimination of a 33-foot roadway and utility easement, patent number 1138516, recorded June 12, 1953, book 91, page 358, along the eastern boundary of the subdivision, subject to condition 1.
And Ms. Lipson, will you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I will be voting in support of this motion. The staff supports this motion, and my understanding is the other half of this, the roadway and utility easement was already vacated on the other side of the subdivision, the neighboring subdivision.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or findings? Ms. Wilson.
I would also add that there was no negative testimony against the vacation request or any objections from reviewing agencies, and that the guide, on page 18, the items 1 through 5, and going over to page 19, item 6, the staff adequately addressed the conditions that we are to consider when we're reviewing a vacation request. So I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, discussion? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, this motion passes. May I have a positive motion for item B on page 19?
Our motion's not up. There's no motion button. Oh, there it goes.
Okay, Mr. Cross.
I got some pages here.
Mr. Cross has some pages.
I got some. Let me go through this. All right, let me find my place.
Page 19.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to actually move to approve the variance from AMC 21.08.050, improvement for Class A design standards, construction type 1 curb and gutters. And I want to make sure I'm on record, because as we go through this, I don't want to have to repeat myself each time. So I address each of your criteria and why I think it makes sense, at least in my eyes, for improvement recommendations. So under your vacation request, let me go back to my notes where I made my circles. Where did I go here?
Mr. Cross?
Yes, sir.
Are you addressing B, C, and D at the same time?
Oh, yeah, that's my, okay, I tell you what. I will move for approval of the variance AMC 21.08.050, improvements from a Class A design standard for construction type. And I actually will move to approve the variances. Can I do B, C, and D all at once?
Yes.
I'm going to do that. That's my movement, to approve B, C, and D. So as well, C, denial of variance from AMC 21.07.060E2, as well as D, denial of a variance from AMC 21.07.060E2.
Thank you. Mr. Whitfield.
Through the chair to the board, I think it's probably better, given the complexity of this particular case and the items that are being up for consideration, that each one of these variances be considered separately. Given the fact that there are a number of variables that go into each one of these variances, they should be discussed separately and findings made separately to each one of these. It's, of course, up to the board to decide what they want to do. I'm making a suggestion, though.
Thank you, Mr. Whitfield. Mr. Cross, are you willing to withdraw your motion and start over?
Yeah, it was perfectly fine. That's what I was going to do to begin with. So we'll just move that we rescind, and I'll start with a move to approve the variance from AMC 21.08.050, improvements for a Class A design standard to construct a Type 1 barrier curb and gutter.
Thank you. And Ms. Lipson seconds your motion. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Yeah, so why I'm proving it is I'm going to start on page 14. It says one of the criteria, and I'm going to list the criteria that staff has presented, and then they've said that the standard hasn't been met, and why I think this actually the standard has been met. And there are special circumstances or conditions affecting the property that such strict application of the provisions of the subdivision regulations would clearly be impractical, unreasonable, or undesirable to the general public. So it's or, means any one of these, not necessarily all three. Putting a barrier curb and gutter on 100 and what I can tell is about 220 feet of road when there's no sidewalk on one side and rolled curb and gutter and rolled curb on the other means that in 220 feet I got three different kinds of curb and gutter going on. If I lived on that street, that would just look heinous. So my thought is that that is impractical and it's unreasonable, that we can, and as, it just doesn't meet that standard as far as I see. I think it's unattractive, and I don't think that it defeats the contours of the relationship, and that seems unreasonable and undesirable. Under B, granting of the specific variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious. So detrimental, I'm trying to wonder how this would be detrimental. I don't think we've got a sidewalk and rolled curb and gutter on one side. We're just extending it into an existing road for like 200 feet and down the cul-de-sac. I don't think this is injurious or causing any harm to it actually looks better and conducive. Section C on page 15, it has such variance will not have a effect of nullifying the intent of the purpose of the subdivision regulations and comprehensive plan. And I guess I'm looking at I don't think anything's being nullified. I'm looking at it being, again, a continuation of the existing neighborhood. It ties into Winchester Loop, and it just makes more sense rather than have all sorts of broken up sidewalks and kind of different designs in a very short area. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Ms. Lipson.
Yes, I'm going to be voting in support of this variance as well. I think that this subdivision is going into an area where there are already lots of developed subdivisions, and we've heard lots of complaints from the community about traffic. I have not heard as many complaints, or really any complaints, about type 1 versus type 2 barrier curbs, except that folks want code compliance for this developer. And I do think, I'm glad staff spoke to the advisory note as to approval for a driveway permit, because I think that is an effort by the staff to still have an enforcement tool, which I agree is really important if this board is going to be continuously approving variances for different types of curbs. So I will be voting in support of this motion.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to discuss this matter? I'll take the floor for a moment. It's my understanding that if we go with the vertical curbs, that these will only be for the size of these lots, 6 feet long, which doesn't make any sense to me. And if I understand that, am I understanding that correctly? That there will only be a 6 foot between each driveway?
That's not correct. In this case, the subdivision is relatively flat, so you're looking at much shorter ramps than you would if a steep subdivision that would require 15-foot ramps. So you're going to have much longer distances of the vertical curb in the subdivision than you would in a steeper subdivision.
Thank you. And approximately how long would those curbs be?
You have that table?
Probably.
We'll look at the table again here, if we can remember what page that was on.
Well, if they're 50 feet minus 14.
Oh, hang on. Was it in staff?
Page 39.
39, okay.
36
Thank
feet.
you.
Pull up that table and take a look at it here.
I'd anticipate between 5 and 8 feet would be what I would anticipate.
So the raised curbs would be between 5 and 8 feet long?
Sorry, the transitions would be so. I believe they stated that the driveways were going to be approximately 14 feet wide. So what would that be, 24? If it was 5 on either side, it'd be 24.
If it was 5 on each other side, it would be 24 feet of, that's going to be 24 feet of
so 14 feet of driveway, an additional 10 feet of transition. Your lot width is 50. So, yeah, 26 feet of, and that's fronting on a single lot. So you're going to have a portion of that on each lot. So you'll have
26 feet.
Yeah, 26 feet twice, but it'll be divided depending on where the driveway's placed. If you have two driveways next to each other, then you'll have longer sections of vertical curve in between, whereas if the driveways are all in the center of the lots, then you'd have double that, so it'd be like 52 feet of vertical curb between each driveway.
52 feet of vertical curb between each driveway?
If one's on the left and one's on the right.
No, you're doubling that.
Right, you're right.
Yeah,
So
they're
26.
centered, so you only have half on each side. So it's going to be 24 to 26 feet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other discussion or findings? Is there any opposition to this motion? I don't see any. I don't hear anybody. So this motion passes. Thank you. May I have a new motion? Mr. Cross, and Ms. Lipson's going to second his motion.
On case S12464, Mountain Meadows Estate Subdivisions, lots 1 through 21, I move on section C, approval of a variance from AMC 21-0.07.060 E2B, standards for pedestrian facilities to install sidewalks on both sides of the streets.
Thank you. And Mr. Cross, will you speak to your motion?
Yes, I'm going to go back through these 4 criteria, starting with A, and you're going to hear, again, a little bit of redundancy. But starting on page 14, are there special circumstances or conditions affecting the property such that strict application would be, again, impractical and unreasonable? So what we're talking about is a vacation of the sidewalk, what is going to be on the north side, which means we'd only have a stretch of sidewalk from lot 8 through lot 5, which again is about a 200-foot sidewalk with nothing on either side. Now, the whole point of having sidewalks is to create a community where you can walk through, but if nobody's going to connect those to anything, I don't think people are going to walk back and forth on the sidewalk in front of their house. I think they just go out to the street and take a walk, in which case, why do we have a sidewalk? It does make more sense for it to be on the south side, which goes across 21 and Lot 6, because that connects on the Winchester Loop, and it also connects out through the thoroughfare on the Abbott Loop, so it just makes sense. It's impractical to cut in a small section of sidewalk that goes nowhere. So section B, also B, granting a specific variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare. There's nothing, it's not detrimental. I don't see that it affects the public welfare at all by eliminating that unnecessary sidewalk that goes nowhere. In section C, a variance will not have a negative effect on nullifying the intent of the purpose of subdivision or regulations of the comprehensive plan. I don't think anything's being nullified. I don't think it makes any sense, again, to put a small section of sidewalk that's not feeding anything. And finally, on page 16D, undue hardship would result from strict application with specific provisions. Yeah, we got a sidewalk that's got to be maintained that goes nowhere and feeds nothing. Why not just have the traffic? The natural progression is the public are not going to walk on that. They're going to go to the sidewalk that actually goes somewhere. They're going to walk across the street. So I have no problem with eliminating that section, so I move to approve it.
Thank you. Are there any other findings? Are there any discussion? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. May I have a motion for item C on page 19, please? D for Dan. Mr. Cross, would you state your motion, please?
In regards to case S12464, Mountain Meadows Estate Subdivision, lots 1 through 21, I move to approve the variance from AMC 21.07.060 E2C, standards for pedestrian facilities to approve sidewalks in cul-de-sac, stem, or bulb.
Thank you. And Ms. Lipson seconds your motion. Mr. Cross, will you speak to your motion, please?
Can we reference what I stated in the earlier, so I don't have to repeat myself?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Are there any discussion or any other findings? I am going to support this, and I like the concept of having the access to Abbott, and which means that most of the pedestrian traffic in the subdivision, if not almost all of it, will be going through to Abbott, and it won't be going through the other subdivisions. And so, I don't see an increase here where these sidewalks are needed. I love sidewalks, but this is one of those cases where, for the reasons you've stated, it doesn't make sense. So I'm going to support this. Are there any other comments or findings? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, this motion passes. May I have a motion for item E? Mr. Cross, would you state your motion, please?
In case S12464 Mountain Meadows Estate Subdivisions Lot through 21, I move to approve the plat for 24 months subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, Condition 2, 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D. Condition 3, Condition 4, Condition 5, Condition 6 to be amended, the last sentence to read, resolve with private development the need to evaluate the lighting levels where Winchester Street is adjacent to the proposed subdivision and install additional street lights if needed to meet municipal required lighting levels. I hope I did that correctly. That's what I had written down.
They recommended taking that sentence
Oh,
out.
they wanted that whole sentence out?
Out of number 6 and move it to number 9.
Okay, so let's remove that to be added to number 9. So number 6 to be amended to remove the last sentence. Number 7, number 8. 8A, sections 1 and 2, and then subject 9 to be the last sentence as noted in section 6. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Lipson seconds it, and Ms. Wilson is next in queue.
Can I make a friendly amendment to your motion and make it clear, because number 6 calls for type 1 curb. I think we just granted a variance from that, so we might want to alter
Look at you.
that language.
Ms. Wilson, we don't do friendly amendments, but you're welcome to make an amendment.
Okay. I'll offer this amendment to amend the language in number 6 to be type 2 curb and gutter.
Thank you.
I think that covers it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and Ms. Lipson.
So this, staff included an advisory note in this case, and just proper procedure, would I move to amend the motion to include the advisory note?
But does not approve the variance to the side. That's only if they don't approve the variance to the sidewalks.
So, Ms. Lipson, what we need to do is,
We need a
Ms. Wilson made a motion. Is there a second for Ms. Wilson's motion? And we're going to address her motion first.
I've seconded it.
And Ms. Lipson seconds it. So, Ms. Wilson, will you address your motion, please?
It's just that the language in number 6 wouldn't make sense with what we had just approved in item letter B. So it's necessary for it to make sense with what we've already approved.
Okay, and Ms. Lipson, did you want to address this?
No, I will be moving in support of her motion.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I will be supporting her motion.
Okay. Are we voting now? Okay, so we're voting for the amendment.
Good catch, by the way.
And that amendment passes, and now it's Ms. Lipson.
I would move to amend the motion on the floor to include that each lot within the subdivision shall apply for and receive approval for a driveway permit from the Municipality of Anchorage Development Services Department prior to approval of a building permit.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Wilson seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, so there's 2 advisory notes the way that I'm reading staff report. The first advisory note said if we approve the variance to curb type and do not approve the variance to sidewalks, so that's inapplicable. The second recommendation was if we approve the variance to curb type, regardless of approval of denial of sidewalk variance. So I think that this is applicable. And I support this because I think the developer is winning by having the board approve their variance request, but I see the need for enforcement, and I'm also hoping that these types of policy changes aren't going to happen through the Platting Board. So I support this because I don't think maybe this would incentivize the developer to have more policy conversations.
Are there any additional comments? Mr. Cross, did you have a comment? Okay, I am going to support this. I believe that from the testimony we heard tonight from staff, that they won't know where the driveways are going to go, and they need to have 6 inches underneath the driveway. So that it does make sense to me. Is there any opposition to this? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second to this motion? Yes, Ms. Wilson, second. There is a second. So is there any opposition to this motion? The motion passes. Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. So we're back to the main motion from Mr. Cross. Yes, please.
Excellent. Let's see what we've got here. Regarding S12464 Mountain Meadows Estate Subdivision, lots 1 through 21, I move for approval of the plat for 24 months, subject to the following conditions: 1, 2 to A, B, C, D, 3, 4, 5, 6 as amended, 7, 8, the addition of 9, and the advisory note.
Thank you. And there was a second on that, and is there any opposition to this motion?
What are we going to do?
This is the main motion.
Yeah, the screens are messing with us.
Are we going to discuss the main motion?
This is the time.
Okay.
Yes.
I feel like we've had a lot of public testimony here, and so it would probably be good to address. I realize this has been a long hearing for everyone, but I would like to speak to this. I am going to be supporting this motion, and I do recognize that there's a lot of opposition from the folks who are living in this specific area, and we're not being deaf to those, but it is our job, in my opinion, as folks who live all across Anchorage. For instance, I live in Airport Heights, and there's lots of narrow streets, and they all interconnect. And I would probably prefer if some of those were dead-end streets, personally, if I was living on those streets. But here we have a comprehensive plan and clear policy directives that are requesting that subdivisions interconnect. And I do think that if your street is really narrow and it takes a long time to move around cars, that folks aren't going to be driving down in as much of an increased density as you fear. And I do think it's also not fair to not interconnect to the people to the east who would be burdened by the additional load that could be shared by both communities. So thank you all for testifying today.
Is there any additional discussion or findings? If there is, raise your hand because my screen doesn't allow it.
Yeah, we're having technical difficulties with our screen, if you wonder why it looks a little confusing.
Mr. Cross, you're recognized.
Yes, so we had 12 testimonies, 12 public comments, 4 of which were supportive, and the other 66% which were against it. But there was really only one major theme of why the individuals who live on King David Drive were against it. It all came down to traffic and the safety issue, and I can understand that. I think it's important to realize that because we're talking about safety, safety shows up in more ways than just traffic. It's important to note that King David does not meet the current code and does not meet the current specs for cul-de-sac design. Part of the reason the fire and safety want this connected is because they see this road as a serious concern on getting fire trucks to the back. They recognize the traffic. They recognize snow and then traffic creates a health hazard, and if a house is on fire, they want to have a nice wide way that they can get there. That's why that they're adamant that this happens, and that's what they stated in their supplied remarks. So under that, yes, we will have an increase in traffic. I also agree because our testimony from, well, we had two individuals who live in the immediate vicinity who said that they wouldn't, that the access onto Cathedral Drive is actually greatly preferred. So I don't think that the thousands of vehicles, I think there was a testimony that thought over 1,000 vehicles more would be added. I think that's a profuse overstatement. I think there will be some traffic, some additional traffic. I also think that it will be increased safety. Fire truck. I also know that because that cul-de-sac will now, in the back of King David Drive will now extend onto Winchester, that'll become a snow cleared. That was also noted in our staff packet here that that they saw that as the snow would no longer be building up in there. They'd be pushing that through and disposing of it. And that this was specifically designed for through traffic. Like this was intended because of this. There was a plan that this goes through. That's why Winchester had the stub. And it was part of a greater design for public safety, ease of flow, that this would be. I do wish when they had originally created King David Drive that they had added and maybe made it a little wider than the 50 feet, but that was code at the time. But we're not here to talk about their lot. We're here to discuss the current our current petitioner and what they're doing with their land. And I believe what they're doing is completely reasonable. Thank you.
Is there any other, Mr. Seward?
Yes, I want to thank the public for your testimony and safety. We really listen to safety issues and that, and we appreciate your comments. As I look at this, as stated by Mr. Cross, the code requirements change, and so we cannot go back and change King David subdivision right of way. It would be it's out of the. You'd have to have a local improvement district within your subdivision. But King David, as I see in the packet, is 33 feet back to curb to back of curb. And the cross street in this new subdivision I see is also going to be 33 feet back of curb, back of curb. You have the excess over there. The back of curbs never go all the way to the property line. Winchester is 36 feet back of curb to back of curb, so it's 3 feet wider. That's just the fact that they're basically the road in King David is meeting the current standards pretty much as that cross street is. And the thought of these are public right-of-ways, the idea of a temporary fence, a barricade, probably would never pass the board. I would never support it because it is a public right-of-way, and the continuity of travel between subdivisions is what traffic and the engineers, that's their department, that's what they plan ahead for. That's all. Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion or findings? I have a couple of issues that were also discussed were pedestrian traffic, and I see this access going to Abbott Loop would be, it appears in my opinion, would be more preferable than walking all the way around over to King David. So I don't see an increase in I'm sorry, the public testimony, if you're asking the public testimony is over. I don't see an increase in pedestrian traffic. And the other issue was drainage, that water from the subdivision would drain onto King David. And we've heard testimony from the development team that they're going to capture the stormwater and put it into a storm drain so that won't run off. So for those reasons, I will be supporting this motion. Is there any opposition to this motion? Do we need to vote? Well, it was. Is there any opposition to this motion? And now we're technically back online. We're now off. Okay, let's vote. And the motion passes unanimously. Where do I start? Where do I start here? I know. You want me to do this now or not? You read the whole I did. You good? Okay. Okay, the next case is case number S12460, end of the road subdivision, lot number 2. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you. This is a request to subdivide one lot into 2 lots. Since the lot to be subdivided is larger than 10 acres and is located in the R10 zoning district, the long plat process applies per 2103-200B. The petition site is located east of Black Wolf Circle, north and south of Chugach State Park in the Battery Community Council. The property is zoned R10, and the Assembly added special limitations in 1986. The proposed subdivision meets the requirements of the R10 zoning district in AMC 2106-1, the district-specific lot and site requirements in AMC 2104-020P2, and the special limitations. Given the narrow frontage of the proposed lots, MOA Traffic recommends a condition of approval to record a shared access agreement between new lots 2A and 2B for a single access point on the Black Wolf Circle using the existing driveway for original lot 2. This condition is reflected in the conditions of approval listed in the staff report. In addition, since this plat abuts Chugach State Park, 2108-040E, access to Chugach State Park must be considered to determine whether or not the proposed subdivision must provide access to the park. The Chugach Access Plan provides the underlying analysis for this requirement, and the parcel to be subdivided in this plat is considered a parcel of opportunity in the plan. Per 2108-040E2, the criteria A through H apply. Those are analyzed in the staff report. And considering those criteria, the Planning Department does not recommend securing an access point through this preliminary plat. As noted, the Chugach Access Plan identifies parcels in the subdivision as parcels of opportunity, and it is important to consider the potential for securing additional public access to Chugach State Park through planning actions such as this one. However, there are already numerous existing access points to Chugach State Park in the immediate area, and this parcel is not identified as an area of high suitability. With that being said, the Department recommends approval of the plat for 24 months, subject to the conditions in the staff report on page 7. Thank you.
And page 8 also?
And page 8. My apologies.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Ms. Lipson.
Thank you. On page 26 of our packet, there's a note, the last sentence, it says advisory note, 2015 aerial imagery shows the constructed access for lot 3 will go through the proposed lots 2A and 2B. And I guess my question is, did this comment, does this mean anything to planning? Because I don't think it's reflected on our plat.
Through the chair, I believe that lot 3 currently takes access through the shared access, or the access point for existing lot 2. So I believe that would have to continue to occur, or they would need to be incorporated into the shared access agreement.
Okay, but nothing about this plat is going to cut off access to lot 3?
No.
Okay.
No, it's a civil matter.
Okay.
Any additional questions of staff? May we have the developers presenter?
Good evening. I'm still awake. I'm Gail High, H-I-G-H, and I would like to save time for rebuttal if needed. I'm with D-High Consulting Engineers, and we are the representatives for Mrs. Roger Cremo and Caroline Renner for the end of road subdivision. I think they covered pretty much everything, although I would like to mention that the existing lot does have the existing house, water and sewer that's viable. And the lot 2A, the new lot, will be 5.16 acres, and the lot 2B with the house will be 7.54 acres. And he already mentioned that Tuliak Circle, which is less than half a mile to the north, has an access road and a cul-de-sac to the Chugach State Park. And I don't see anything else that I can add.
Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 5 seconds for rebuttal. Are there questions for the petitioner's representative tonight? Nope. No questions? Not yet.
Not yet.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify tonight? Anyone at all? Okay, it's back to you. Would you like to have any of your 9 minutes and 5 seconds?
I don't think, unless there's any questions.
I don't. Is there any questions? No questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to close the public hearing, and the matter now rests with the board. May I have a motion, a positive motion, in the case of S12460 for approval of the plat for 24 months subject to conditions on page 7 and 8? Mr. Cross, you're already ahead of me, and Ms. Lipson's going to second your motion after you make it.
Excellent. Case 12460, end of road subdivision, Lot 2. I move to approve the plat for 24 months, subject to the following conditions: 1, 2, 3, 4, 4A, B, C, D, E, 5, 5A, B, and 6A.
Will you speak to your motion, please?
Yes. This actually is a pretty simple replat, just due to the size of the lot. She had to come to the platting board. Normally, we would see something like this, doing a short plat, and it would be much less expensive and time intrusive. But, private development approves of it, no divisions and no problems from the right-of-way department or traffic department or watershed services. Typically, if you have public testimony of of homeowners in the neighborhood, they're mostly concerned with drainage. The lot's big enough, it won't affect anything as far as septic or well or impacting surrounding properties. And additionally, the property owner and utilities should not raise, lower, or grade the property in a manner where they're alter the drainage patterns for those shown from those shown on the approved grading drainage plan without prior approval of the Muni. So any drainage issues will be resolved through the Muni. So it's pretty clean. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional findings or discussion? Well, I'll go. On page 5, this is just briefly, this proposed subdivision conforms to the goals of the Anchorage 2020 Comprehensive Plan and the Anchorage 2040 Land Plan map, and I intend to support this. Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. Good job. And do I read this? Okay. The reports, persons to be heard, committees, board member comments. I have one comment for the board members, and this is just a minor technicality that we haven't been practicing, but when a motion is, until a motion is made, it probably shouldn't be seconded. And so after the motion is read into the record, then we're open for a second. And other than that, you will adjourn the meeting.
Because you never know what I'm going to say.
That's true. Or anybody else. So we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.